morning, everybody, and welcome to Charleston, South Carolina. This is a brand new experience for me. We have a packed room in Charleston that you can't see. Everybody clap and yell and scream. See? And then because we're social distancing, we have people downstairs who are going to clap and scream. They're not clapping and screaming. This technology, if it works, and the most important man in the room is Jordan. Jordan is the IT expert, so he is helping us take care of this. We have a lot of things to cover today, the 7 steps to selling success. I want to thank Ed and Chris for inviting me to Charleston, and thank Paul for hosting here. It's a fantastic market with a great looking building and a great looking team, and I wish you could see it on camera, but I'll have to just visually bring it to you. This is radio, right? So what do we need visuals for?
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Those of us in radio and media sales are crazy. Raise your hand if you're crazy. We all think we're crazy, and I'm counting on those of you watching on the stream to raise your hand and do the things we're talking about in the room here, because I can see you. Jordan has made it possible so that I can see each and every one of you through your camera in your computer. Right, Jordan? Yes, we're all good. So before we get started, I just want to share with you some details. If you need a bathroom break, obviously I can't see you, but if you need a bathroom break, take it. This is adult education. You don't need to raise your hand to leave the room. And if you get a call, I know how precious it is to get callbacks from clients these days. If you get a phone call, you have 2 options. Number 1, put it on speakerphone so we can all evaluate how you do on the call. Or number 2, just step out of the room and take care of business and then come back. You were all sent a PDF this morning called a workbook, so I hope you have that printed out and with you. There are going to be some blanks to fill out. The first one is at the top of the page. Adults learn best and retain more when they are involved in the process. So I do have a live studio audience, and the live studio audience is going to be very involved in the process, and I appreciate that. And those of you at home or wherever you're watching from, you'll play along as well. And we have an active chat box right now. Let's see. Manchester is here. Andrew, good morning. Jordan, good morning. Kelly is here. We have lots of people. If you have any problems, email Paul O'Malley, P. O'Malley at charlestonrg.com, P. O'Malley, charlestonrg.com. Well, you got an email from Paul this morning, so you just have to hit reply, and we'll take care of any technical problems. So if we do have any technical problems, we'd like to know about it right away, but let's get started. There are 4 stages to learning a new skill, and I don't care whether it's riding a bike, flying an airplane, or whatever it is you're trying to learn. There are 4 stages of learning a new skill, and many of you are in different levels of these learning phases right now in your career. We have somebody in the room that's been here 6 weeks. We have, how long have you been here?
Almost a year.
Almost a year?
4 weeks.
4 weeks, oh.
9 days.
9 days, okay. So here's what the first stage is. We call it unconscious incompetence. And don't get offended by the term incompetence. It just means that you don't know what you don't know, and you have no idea what you're doing. So that's unconscious incompetence. We call that the ignorance is bliss phase. Then about 3 months into it, you move into the second phase, which is called conscious incompetence. This is the Oh Schmidt moment, where you think, oh my God, what have I gotten into? I came into this business because I wanted concert tickets and go to promotions and events, and there's a business plan in place and I have to know what I'm doing, and you figure out that you don't know what you're doing. And for the managers on the call today, this is the phase where we lose a lot of salespeople because it becomes overwhelming to them. And this is the time when they need your arm around you, not in a COVID world, but they need your support, they need your encouragement, and your job is to build their belief in themselves and belief in the business. Because when they figure out that they don't know something, they need help. And everybody goes through this phase, and I don't care what you're trying to learn, you all go through, you know what you don't know, and that's the conscious incompetence. Well, then about 6 months to a year is when you move into conscious competence. You know what you know and you're just doing it. And you're doing it well. And this is when you become proficient at your job, you get better and better, you continue to learn, you continue to explore new options and new things, but you know what you know, and you're doing it, and you're doing a good job. And then somewhere around the 5-year mark, you go to the fourth phase, which is you forget what you know and you just do it based on instinct. We call that unconscious competence. You're so good you don't even have to think about it. You're just rocking along and you're calling clients and you're putting deals together, putting strategies together, and that's when things are good. And then what happens oftentimes is companies will make you the manager because the top seller is always a great manager, right? They make you the manager and you have people who have forgotten what they know trying to teach people who don't know what they don't know, and it just causes this clash. This was a group exercise we're not going to do because we don't have visuals and enough people, but here's what we're going to cover today. In addition to our faces, to be socially distant and to be very sensitive to the situation we're dealing with, we have a lot to cover and we have a short time to do it. So get your pajamas ready. We're going to be here till about Saturday at noon, I think. But actually I've jammed about 3 days worth of a seminar into one day because I want you to come away with this with so much information that you have the opportunity to review it and go forward and be better at what you do. We're going to talk about consultant style selling, why that's different, prospecting, appointments, research, client needs analysis, elements of a proposal, presentation skills, objections and closing, effective schedules, effective creative, and we're going to have some fun at the end with personality styles. Well, hopefully we'll have fun all along the way. So when you told your family or friends you were going into radio, you probably got some mixed reactions. I'm going to go work for a media company. So now this is where the participation from the room comes in. When I say the word salesperson, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Someone that hassles you.
Hassles you?
Pushes.
Pushy?
Cheesy.
Cheesy? So these types of things might come to mind. Pushy, aggressive, slimy, selfish. Wait a minute, you're all in sales. and not a positive word came out. And so even those of us in the business have a difficult time wrapping ourselves around the positivity at sales. How about in sales, we're on the front lines of economic prosperity and growth in our marketplace. We are the ones that put buyers and sellers together. And if the buyers and sellers are together, the community grows, businesses thrive, and we're responsible for that. We are the communicators that help our clients meet new prospects. So one of the things that we obviously have to do is shift our own beliefs about sales and our own perceptions about sales. But there's a reason we all have such a negative perception of sales. It's A, we grew up with it. B, we still experience it today in 2020, which is shocking to me. I've been in this business for more years than I care to remember, and we've always talked about improving the professionalism of sales, but yet still today, on July 16th, 2020, sellers in the room have a negative impression of the business of sales. So we have to fix that. And let's see if we can do that today. All right, this is an exercise that I want you to do. It's a timed exercise. It's in your workbook. It's on page 3. It's called the numbers game. Don't look at it yet. Let me explain the rules of the numbers game. You're going to see numbers on the screen and on your workbook. And what I want you to do is I'm going to give you 60 seconds and I want you to circle as many numbers as you can. But here's the catch, you have to do it sequentially. So you start with number 1, which is in the top left, and I want you to circle as many numbers as you can in 60 seconds. Go. "50 seconds. "40 seconds. "30 seconds. "20, 19, 18, shut up, I'm looking at numbers, 18, 17, 16, you're really throwing me off. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, stop. Who got to 82? Where did you get? Caitlin?
I got to 18.
18?
20.
Ginger?
I got to 22.
22. All right. In the chat box, tell us where you got. What number did you get to? We have a little bit of a delay here too, don't we? Like how long is it? 30 seconds or so? Okay, so put your numbers in the chat group. So typically what happens on the first go-around is you get between 18 and 25. I've had somebody get as high as 40, but that was unusual. So now, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? Flip to page 3, and you'll see the numbers game again, but I'm going to give you a little bit of training on this one. And this will demonstrate to you the impact of training. Okay, Andrew had 20. Is that the Andrew McNeil from the NAB's Media Sales Academy? There's a young McNeil that, okay, 17, Alex, 20. Okay, you're all about the same then, 20, 17, 22. Thank you for participating. So now we flip to page 2. Here's the impact of training, and this gets you from unconscious competence to, or unconscious incompetence to conscious competence. Now on page 2, I want you to take your pen and draw a line across the page, separate from 1351 all the way across, and then draw another line from the top to the bottom between 17 and 22 and go all the way down. Okay? So now what I want to demonstrate for you is that number 1 is in the top left quadrant. Number 2 is in the top right. Number 3 is in the bottom left. Number 4 is in the bottom right. So there's a pattern actually to the numbers. So now I'm going to give you another 60 seconds and see how many you can get with a little bit of training. Ready? Go. "50 seconds. "30 seconds. "20 seconds. "10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and put those pens down. Everything working down here? Good. All right. Now, how many did you get this time? Ginger?
24.
24. Caitlin?
39.
39. Megan? I'm sorry, Nick. Megan or Nikki?
Megan.
Megan, sorry.
22.
Okay, 22. All right. So what happened? Many of you dramatically improved your performance. Text in on the chat screen how many you were able to get to on your second go-round. What I'd like you to do for those of you in the room, and if you're in a, I know some of you are in a conference room or in a sales pit environment. Wow, Bergman got 40, Andrew 42. Wow, impressive. So what happens usually is people double or and sometimes triple their performance. But why is that? Why do you think that is?
Because you figured out the pattern.
Because you know the pattern, right? And that's the thing about sales, is that when you're new and you get into it, all you see are numbers on the page. Paul?
I'd also say focus.
Focus.
It's easy to focus when you have a plan.
Okay? You know the pattern and you're focused, and that's why your performance improves. So just amongst yourself here in this room, and if you're with somebody, just talk about it. If you're not with somebody, think about it. But what are the implications on your career? Why would we play this game? What's the point? Go ahead and take a minute to talk about it.
Have a plan.
And a plan.
So you know where you go.
Mhm.
You know what to do. And you feel
And
more
it's-
at ease.
Especially for me, I'm completely new in sales and radio, so Paul has implemented a plan in place, and that makes me focus on the steps too.
Okay?
Hasn't worked yet, but we're working on it.
So having a plan in place, knowing the roadmap, basically. The thing I know about sales in my years of experience is that sales is a repeatable process. There is a recipe. And if you follow the recipe, you will have success more often than not. There's no guarantee. There's never a guarantee that you'll be successful at anything. But the fact that you're here and in this great company means you've already made it. Now you just have to make it for yourself and go that next step. So sales is a repeatable process, and once you know the process and you know the steps, then all you have to do is simply repeat them. And I say simply, but it's not that simple. It's easy, but it's not that simple. And then this happens, right? I mean, we've got this repeatable process going along, and the world, March 15-ish, just shuts down. The headlines, the lockdowns, coronavirus lockdowns, face mask shortage, COVID-19. So here's what happens. The new people in sales, Caitlin, the new people in sales go, oh my God, how am I going to survive with this COVID thing? And the veteran performers are like, oh my God, I've forgotten what I know. How am I going to survive? So it's the one time as a team, no matter what level of the learning experience you're in, we're all in the same boat. I'm not going to use the cliche, we're all in this together, but we really are. Whether you're consciously competent or unconsciously incompetent, you have the same experience. And so I'm so thrilled that Ed and Chris and Paul has invited everybody to this call, because what happens is we have to go back to the basics to get back on track. So for the new folks, you're starting with the basics. But for you senior sellers, you veteran sellers who are absolutely phenomenal at what you do, this day is a reminder to some of the things that got you to where you are today. I'm probably not going to teach you anything brand new. What I am going to do is share with you some information that you've probably forgotten about. And maybe I have a different spin on it, and that'll help you get even better. But whether you're brand new or whether you're a senior seller, this is a perfect day for you to focus. Oh, hi, Chris. Chris is on the call. Just love seeing these names that I recognize. So whether you're a senior seller or a new seller, this is important, because there are 3 required skills to make it in this business. And those are empathy, expertise, and problem-solving skills. Empathy, expertise, and problem-solving skills. There are 4 types of sellers. There's the commercial visitor. The commercial visitor is the person that just is on a route. They go to the same clients, they go to the same places every week. I had some good, first of all, before I get into this, I should tell you that there's no judgment when I talk about these different types of sellers, because I had very, very successful commercial visitors working for me in my markets. And they are very proficient at going out and seeing the same clients and maybe some new prospects along the way and picking up their $500 a month order. And I'm convinced that half the time they got the order just because the people liked them. It had nothing to do with the value that the company was bringing to them. They just liked Al or they liked Jim, and they said, hey, yeah, we'll do business with you. So the commercial visitor's on a route salesman. Quick story, the Kraft Cheese Company. Everybody knows who Kraft is. Back in the 1800s, they were delivered by horse and buggy. And so the horses and the buggy were the most important. The driver or the salesperson on the buggy was insignificant. He was the one who was selling the milk and selling the cheese, but the horse knew the route. So if the horse died, that was a big problem. So they were more worried, and that's a commercial visitor. A horse can be a commercial visitor, or just that relationship, and it's that true relationship. The product peddler is the second phase, and the product peddler is, am I following? You guys have to keep me in check here to make sure. Oh yeah, okay, we're good. The product peddler is, have you ever seen QVC or one of those shopping shows on television? I can't understand and believe how they can take the most inane, insignificant product and within 20 minutes make me think I have to have it. That's a product peddler. They know everything about their product. They know their morning drive AQH. They know what the morning talent, they know what the morning talent is doing. They know everything about the product. And they go out and they talk with such passion and excitement about the product that the clients can't help but get infected by that and want to do business with them. And that's level 2. Level 3 is the consultant seller. This is the phase that was introduced about 1985-ish. And this, by the way, is ubiquitous to sales, not just media sales. But the consultant seller is what we call the problem solver. They go in and they identify the needs of a client, and then they come up with solutions using their product to satisfy those needs. So they are a consultant of sorts, the problem solver. And then there's the 4th level of selling, and that is the sustaining resource. We call this person the problem preventer. The sustaining resource is often viewed as an unpaid member of the client's staff. You're invited to the Christmas party, you're invited to the board meetings, you're invited to upper management executive meetings to give your valuable input because you have positioned yourself as such an incredible resource that they need you in that situation. In my experience as a sustaining resource with some clients, I actually helped them develop their compensation system. I helped car dealers look at a customer relationship management. I had one car dealer that I actually negotiated his deal with his boss for him every year because he was a terrible negotiator, couldn't write a letter to save his life, so every time he needed a letter written, he'd call me and say, "Can you write a letter?" Of course I can. So I was a sustaining resource. And the thing about sustaining resource is the things you do for your clients oftentimes have nothing to do with radio or marketing. They are things that are drawing on your business acumen and business expertise. So in your packet, you see this 4 levels of selling. And what I'd like you to do is take a look at the 4 levels, but I guess I missed a couple of things. So before we get to that, back on page 4, let me just help you fill out the blanks. Consultant style selling is different from traditional selling. It's not about you, it's about the client. You're centered on solving prospect problems and needs. It positions you as the expert. And Don Beveridge is the originator of this 4 levels of selling. And he says that I will not ask for your business unless I can come up with a plan for improving it. I will not ask for your business unless I can come up with a plan for improving it. And I'm going to hold the Phil Fisher quote because I have a great picture of Phil Fisher and I want to share that with you in just a couple of minutes so you'll go back to that. But right now I want you to take 3 or 4 minutes at home, at the office, with your partners here in the room, look at the chart of the 4 levels of selling. You'll see that it's divided across the top, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then on the left-hand side, the kinds of activities you're involved in, bless you, the kinds of activities you're involved in, the objective of the call, the level of trust you have, the approach, the focus. I want you to look at that chart and self-analyze. Tell me where you think you fall on that chart. We'll give you about 60 seconds to do that. Jordan, should we be playing music when we give them their 60 seconds? Or should we just muck it up a bit?
Don't get too cute.
Don't get too cute? All right. We won't get cute. It's weird hearing myself on it. Is it 30 seconds delay?
It's a little more than that.
Okay.
It's pretty bad now.
Okay.
But if he says a bad word, we can cut it. Don't say bad.
I don't say bad words.
Just thinking on their delay button.
Yep. Think of a particular client in mind, couple of clients. Think of your top 5 clients, your top 10 clients. Caitlin, think of how you want to be as a seller, since you're probably not, don't have a huge client list right now?
We used to watch the Don Beverage tapes when I was CSS.
I love that. Sweated profusely. Customer focus, customer focus. All right, let's talk about the chart. Let's talk about where you think you see yourself on the chart. Caitlin?
Well, what I want to be is the consultant seller,
Okay.
the problem solver.
Okay, Ginger?
I'm between a consultative seller and a sustaining resource.
Okay. I keep forgetting her name. Megan. Megan, where do you see yourself?
More of the sustaining resource based on the trust and, relationships.
Okay. Well, I think the aspiration is we all want to be level 3 and 4 sellers. And I don't know you, I've never been out on the streets with you. And I think that we all have a very positive view of ourselves. I know I did as a salesperson. The real key is, where do your clients see you on this chart? There's a square at the bottom, there are a couple of lines at the bottom that say, what are a couple of things, what are 3 things you could do with this chart beyond leaving it in the drawer where all workbooks from prior seminars go to die and never be seen again? But talk amongst yourselves here, what are 3 things, 3 ideas you could come up with for using this chart beyond today?
Just one thing, what
Is fine.
So I
Okay,
would
so-
like
Go ahead.
focus areas to improve on,
Okay,
and then use as a roadmap to develop your game plan
okay,
for
okay.
by account.
Perfect. Caitlin? Anything to add to that?
This would be something for me I would want to tack onto my desk and refer back to, of just keeping that in mind.
So
Solving problems.
a visual reminder on your desk. Megan?
For me, it'd be like the things that I don't want to continue doing, in these first couple of categories where, like Paul was saying, you can want to be the sustaining resource, and maybe you are achieving that with certain clients, but, we all can kind of revert back to, hey, just stopping by, seeing what's going on, checking in, anything kind of like that, memorized, pitch, things like that. So winging it, I want to be more prepared.
Well, it's so awesome that you're transparent enough to recognize that you can fall back into those other behaviors, because we all can. And again, I said there's no judgment. I had very successful commercial visitors. I had a very successful product peddler. We called him Bill 24-Hour Grid 5 Rogan. And that's because we had a grid card system, and he always sold at the end, the lowest part of the system, but he knew the products inside and out. So I think we can all agree that the goal is to get to consultant seller and sustaining resource. But here's the shocking reality. If you were to ask your clients where you are on that, that's the important part. And some of the ideas that I've heard, and when I ask for ideas, please actively use the chat box as you think about these things, and I can refer to the chat box as well as we go throughout the day, because there's a lot of times when I'm going to be asking questions and discussions. Remember, adults learn best when they're involved in the process, and so you're going to be involved in this process all throughout the day. A couple of the ideas that I've heard sellers tell me in previous sessions is they'd like to take this to their client on their annual review meeting and say, I was in this seminar, I don't remember the guy's name, but he had this cool chart, and he says that this is the way sales process works. I'd like you to look at this chart with me and evaluate where you think our relationship is. Because it really doesn't matter what we think, does it? It's what our clients perceive us to be. We can aspire to be level 4, but our clients may hold us back. Another seller, a really gutsy one, probably like Caitlin, said, I'm going to take it on my new prospect calls and say, there are 4 levels of selling skills. Which level do you want our relationship to be? And let the client tell you where they want to go. So here's harsh reality. 90% of sellers today, 9 out of 10, operate in the product peddler and commercial visitor world. 9 out of 10. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's the default. It's what we grew up with. It's why sales has a bad name. But product peddler and commercial visitor is where 90% of sellers reside today. And I don't know if that holds true in Saga. Saga is a fantastic company, and I would bet that you're at a higher level than anybody else. But 90% of sellers are in the commercial visitor and product peddler mode. And what we encourage you to do is have level 3 and 4 moments. When you're about to go on a meeting, look at the chart like Caitlin's going to put it on her wall. Look at the chart and say, what can I do to make this a level 3 meeting instead of a level 2 meeting? And so constantly refer back to this and constantly try to revise your approach so that you can have level 3 and 4 moments. Let's look specifically at what makes each of these categories. The product peddler starts with an open, does a pitch, deals with objections, a close, deals with objections, a close, deals with objections, a close. There's a lot of objections handling with a product peddler. Why? Because they've spent no time talking about strategy, building belief and value. All they're doing is pitching product. So the commercial visitor, that's the product peddler is the QVC guy. The 50% of sellers are in the product peddler category right now. 50%. They're very good. They're experts on media, and they know media inside and out, and they go out and pitch those products. The package of the month is great for them. Without a package, they're lost. Without a sales package that's been created by the manager, they're lost because they don't strategically think outside the box and put those things together. So 50%, keep running total of the math, 50% of sellers are product peddlers, 40% of sellers are commercial visitors. The commercial visitor is the, hey, I like you, you like me, buy from me, and I can get you concert tickets. That's the commercial visitor. 40% of sellers are in the commercial visitor world. And those are seen as people that might tell a little white lie every once in a while just to get the deal done, right? Hey, we got a new customer loyalty program. Buy this and you'll go on a cruise at the end of the year. That's the commercial visitor. And again, 50% in the product peddler, 40% in the commercial visitor. What are we up to? 90%. So 10% of sellers today operate consistently as consultant sellers and sustaining resource. Specifically, 8% of sellers are consultant sellers. They're problem solvers. And 2% of sellers are problem preventers or the sustaining resource. Now, there's a caveat to this, and I want to share this with you. It's not all in your control. The client will oftentimes determine what level they'll let you operate at, which is why I say there's no judgment, which is why I say the aspiration is to get to level 4, but sometimes you're never going to get there with certain clients. There are clients that call me to buy training today, and I'm operating in product peddler mode. You know, I'm in the National Speakers Association, and we'll get calls and say, we've got this big event coming up, and we need 90 minutes on prospecting, can you do it? And I'll say, well, tell me about the audience and tell me about, no. Look, I'm evaluating 15 speakers today. Send me your video and your price. Do you want to play or not? Well, what am I going to do? You got to play. So if the client forces you in product peddler, be the best product peddler there is. If the client forces you into commercial visitor, be the best commercial visitor you can be. But there's the Don Beveridge quote again, I won't ask for your business without coming up with a plan for improving it. And what I like about that, and Don was, again, one of the early influencers of my career, what I like about that is where it focuses your attention. It focuses you on level 3 skills. You're not going to ask for business unless you can improve it. You know, you got to feel good about what you do every day, right? And at the beginning of this session, we give you a chance to give input on what sales means to you. What does it mean, salesperson? And all of those negative things came out of everybody's mouth, including mine. But you don't want to go to a job where you're seen as slimy, pushy, aggressive, hostile. liar. You know, it's no fun to be that way. So by using this, I will not ask for your business unless I can first come up with a plan for improving it. And I used to use that in prospect calls. I used to use that in letters. Now in email signatures, I'll have that. It just sets the tone. Now, I mentioned Phil Fisher. Phil Fisher was one of my early influencers. He was one of the original founders of a company called the Midwest Family Broadcasting, based in Madison, Wisconsin. And Phil was, he was a great guy. And I say was because Phil just passed on July 6th. And he's in the Wisconsin Broadcasters Hall of Fame. And the word that I hear most often when people are describing Phil is unique, interesting. I didn't hear loving, warm, charming, and that's nothing against Phil. Here's what I mean by that. When you would go into Phil Fisher's office, if he were alive today and you would say, Phil, COVID is just killing me. I can't get anybody to meet with me. I can't get my billing back on track. Phil would look at you and he would say, Schmidt, that's your problem. But then he'd follow it up with a question and say, what's their problem? See, our problem is our billing is down. Our problem is we're not hitting goals. Our problem is our commission checks aren't the way they used to be. Our problem is we look at our billing and our inventory and we think, oh my gosh, you can drive a truck through it. That's our problem. That's not our client's problem. So what Phil Fisher taught me is to focus exclusively on the customer, because your customers have problems. They have real problems, real business problems. Your customers had to close their doors for 30, 60, 90, some are still closed today. Imagine if you had to go out of business for 90 days and you didn't have a savings account built up. You didn't have any backup plan or any plan B. And let's face it, most people don't. And nobody would have predicted COVID-19. If you would have asked me a year ago what's going to happen in 2020, there's nothing on the radar that would indicate we're going to have to shut businesses down from March to June, and we're all going to have to stay at home, and we're going to have to do training virtually, and we're going to have to try to meet with clients on Zoom meetings. Nobody would have predicted this. So nobody was prepared for it. None of us. But your clients want partnerships. They want help. They want somebody to come alongside them and guide them through this. And that's where you can be that sustaining resource and that consultant seller. So you can go back and be the product peddler, and the classic example of that is the used car salesperson, right? This is where the bad name of sales comes from. He's even got the grill. But you can be the used car salesman, you can be the product peddler, or you can make a decision today. Do you want to be a salesperson, or do you want to be a business person who happens to sell? And again, it's about focus. Do you want to be a salesperson, or do you want to be a business person that happens to sell? Now, based on all of the responses, when I asked you to name the first thing that comes to your mind when I said salesperson, I would hope that it's a no-brainer. You all want to be business people that happen to sell, because nobody wants that moniker. You know, we've gone through these transitions of titles. When I first started in the business, my business card said sales consultant, sales consultant. And then about 5 years in, I changed it to marketing consultant. And then we go with all these flashy names. We don't change a whole lot, but we change the title. Well, I'm a strategist. I'm a business strategist. That's what I like to call myself. I'm a business strategist. I help your business grow. I help your business explore new opportunities. And yeah, I happen to sell media as a way of doing that. But the world we live in today as media sellers, particularly in a company the size of Saga, is you have a lot more than AM/FM radio to sell. When I started, I had an AM station and an FM station. And we had 18 units an hour on the AM and 12 units an hour on the FM. That's all we had to sell. Nothing else. Yeah, we could do the occasional event, but we had AM, FM. Today, you can sell anything. Back in the day, I had to partner with the TV station to get video done. I had to partner with the newspaper or the direct mail company, and we did these strategic partnerships on behalf of the client to give them a media mix. Now you are the media mix. And I hope that those of you new to this business recognize how wonderful that is. You know, some of you in this business are coming into it right now. You don't even know what it means to not ever have a cell phone in your life. I was one of the very first people in the country, because I'm a tech geek, which is why I get along so well with Jordan, but I was one of the very first people in the country to have a cell phone in my car. It was a Motorola 800. You had to have it hardwired into the phone and drilled in, and it was that long, and it cost, are you ready for this? 40 cents a minute to make a call. That was 1986, 40 cents a minute to make a call. Now we all have NASA computers in our pockets and purses called smartphones, right? All right, so remember we talked a minute ago about patterns and the numbers game. Well, here's where that comes to fruition. At the RAB, we teach the 7 steps to selling success. And the 7 steps to selling success are nothing magical. It's prospecting, it's appointment getting, it's research, customer needs analysis, proposal, presentation, and close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Caitlin, there's your roadmap. That's how you have to start the sales process. What happens sometimes is we go right to presentation and proposal, and we skip the other steps, and you're destined to fail. Can you be a product peddler and be in presentation mode all the time and skip the other 6 steps? Of course you can. But expect a closing ratio of about 5%. Expect to have to talk to about 500 people a month to get, a few to buy to get to your numbers. So there's a smarter way to do it. So it's prospecting, it's appointments, it's research, it's client needs analysis, proposal, presentation, close. And we're going to talk about closing. Are you a little overwhelmed by that? It can feel overwhelming to have those 7 steps in front of you and to be looking at those 7 steps and think, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it's the right work. When I was in college, I tried to make chocolate chip cookies for the first time. My mom was a great cook and baker, and I tried to make chocolate chip cookies, and they make it so easy. On the back of the Toll House package, there's the recipe and how to do it, right? Well, I didn't do that. I just threw everything together in the bowl and forgot the baking. Is it baking soda or baking powder? Does it matter? All I have is boom. And I threw it all together in the bowl, put them in the oven, and those of you who are bakers know what happened. It came out as little rocks, right? I didn't follow the order and sequence of the ingredients. And if you follow the order and sequence of the ingredients, you can get those wonderful cookies that are crispy on the outside and gooey on the inside with the chocolate, the drip. Can you tell I didn't have breakfast, Jordan? So anyway, by following the recipe, prospect, appointments, research, customer needs analysis, proposal, and presentation, you better your odds at having success. And we all want to have success, don't we? So there's 3 secrets of success in sales. We talked about the 3 skills. What were they? Anybody remember? I know we're going fast and throwing a lot of stuff at you. Empathy, expertise, and problem-solving skills are the skills required to sales, and there's 3 secrets for success. Number 1 is you have to know what you know. You have to know what you're doing, right? You can't be incompetent. You have to know what you're doing. Now, you're not going to get there right away, but you eventually have to know what you know. And then second phase is you have to know what you know. And that speaks to what? What's the word there? Knowing what you know means you are confident and conscious of your skills and ability. So step 1 is you've got to know what you're doing. Step 2 is you've got to know that you know, which breeds that confidence. And new sellers like Caitlin have no clue what that means and don't have that confidence. And that's why Paul is alongside you to help build the belief first in yourself and then in the products and services that you offer. And then number 3 is you have to be known for what you know. This is where that sustaining resource, we call them referrals, this is where people talk about you in the market. Do you have a person that you count on to do your hair, Ginger?
Yeah.
Do you have a person that you count on to style your eyes, your glasses, help you pick out your eyewear? Do you have a go-to for your clothing? a go-to person. See, we all have a go-to person, somebody who is known for what they know. If you're going to do a landscape project, what do? You talk to your neighbors. Who does good landscaping? So here's the harsh question for you, is in your marketplace, in Charleston, in Southern Illinois, in Michigan, if I were to go ask the clients, who's the best marketing expert around, would they mention your name? That's when you know you've made it to being a sustaining resource. Because here's the thing about the third secret of success, being known for what you know. When you're known for what you know, people come to you for help and advice, and not your lowest price. That even alliterates well. When you're known for what you know, people come to you for help and advice and not your lowest price. So when you're putting strategies together and you're having client interactions, if you're constantly getting beat up on price, that should be a little internal signal coming back to July 16th, 2020. Ooh, I better get back to that chart that guy shared with us, because for some reason they don't see me as a sustaining resource, as a consultant. I need to be known for what I know, because they're trying to nail me on price. You know, when you know what you're doing, give you an example in the medical world. Who's been to a doctor recently? And I know it's privacy, so I won't ask, but who's been to a doctor in the last year? We all have, hopefully, for an annual physical or something. When you go to the doctor and the doctor says, you have this diagnosis and this is the treatment, how many of you say, hold on, doc, how much is that going to cost? And then when they say, well, it'll be $40,000, let's just use cancer, because, or let's use cancer because it affects everybody, sadly. Well, cancer treatments, it's going to be $500,000. How many of you would look at the doctor and say, can you do it for $250,000? I really can't afford $5,000. Could you do it for $250,000? Why don't we negotiate with our medical professionals? We automatically know that they know what they're talking about, and we trust them. That's the key word. We trust their input. Now, with the cost of medical procedures these days, maybe we should. But I do get a little leery when the laser surgeons came out and started advertising, buy one eye, we'll get the second eye free. I'm not sure I want to go to the discount provider when he's going to put a laser in my eye, right? But we trust them so much that we don't question them on price. So if you're getting questioned on price, again, no judgment. If you're getting questioned on price, you should recognize that maybe there's an issue that you need to address on your trust factor. Maybe they don't see you as that sustaining resource. Peter Drucker is called the father of modern management. And Peter Drucker was, I don't know if you've read any of his books. I'll recommend books throughout the day because I read like all the time. I've got a Kindle with me at all times, and I'm always reading and listening to audiobooks because that's how we get better. You have to expose yourself to new information. And I don't just stay on business books because I am a tech geek and a business geek, but I try to expand that and read other things that are going on in the world too. I don't read fiction because there's enough fiction going on Facebook. I see enough fiction on Facebook. I don't need fiction novels. But I do read things that are outside my circle of influence. I'll read things about being a lawyer. I'll read things about being a race car driver. I'm reading a great book right now. I forget her name, but she's written the book, The New Jim Crow, which is a book on racism and where racism got its roots and where, why we're dealing with what we're dealing with today. It's given me a whole new appreciation for what's going on. And if you don't continually expand your mind, you're going to be like one of those Facebook people that either loves or hates, and it's just, so reading is really good. And Peter Drucker said the customer rarely buys what the business thinks it's selling. Top performers in every industry sell concepts, and that's why they're top performers. So help me out. Where are we at here? Okay, we're on page 6. Okay. So the customer rarely buys what the business thinks it's selling. What does that mean? What do you think you're selling? Caitlin, what are you going to start selling?
Well, it's going to be radio. Yeah,
Radio. Okay. Megan, what do you sell?
Radio, digital.
Okay.
Be a concept for a solution.
Ginger, what do you sell?
The opportunity opportunity for the business that I'm working with to have success and grow their
Okay, not fair. You have experience. No, I'm just kidding. That's fantastic. The customer rarely buys what the business thinks it's selling. We think we're selling marketing. We think we're selling advertising. And in truth, we are. But that's not what clients are buying. Your clients, Caitlin, are going to buy a better brand identity. They're going to buy more store traffic. They're going to buy a new employee because the current engineer just left and they need to bring in a new employee. They're going to buy those things. Clients don't buy products, they buy solutions. Thank you, Alex. That's exactly correct. That's exactly what Peter Drucker is saying. So you sell marketing solutions, that's not what the clients are buying. Clients don't buy marketing. I can tell you right now, there's not a single business owner in Charlotte or Charleston, South Carolina, or Charlotte, North Carolina, or Ottumwa, Iowa, or Oshkosh, Wisconsin that woke up this morning, their alarm went off at 6:30 and they said, wow, I need to buy me some 30/60s morning drive and sports. It's not reality. That's not what they're buying. They're buying solutions to their problems. So let's talk about some concepts. Since Peter Drucker introduced the topic of concepts, before we walk through the rest of the 7 steps, let's talk about some of the concepts. And coincidentally, I have, I think, 7 concepts to share with you. Yes, okay. Lori is giving a gotcha on that. Good. Number 1, take control of your own attitude. Take control of your own attitude. Anybody see the movie Backdraft? It's an older one, I admit, but it's a movie about firefighters. And it's got Kurt Russell and his younger brother is on the right. And they grew up in a firefighting family. And the younger brother went away and did his prodigal son thing, you know, drinking, smoking, drugs, whatever. And you know, did all those things, and then came back to the family business of being a firefighter. And Kurt Russell met with him on a boat and said, what are you doing? Why are you here? And he said, well, I want to learn to be a firefighter. And he said, you have to understand something in firefighting. You can't have a bad day in firefighting. If you have a bad day, people die. Well, the good news is I've never heard of anybody dying selling marketing. Now, that doesn't mean there hasn't been car crashes, but nobody gets killed because they sold marketing that didn't work, right? So we can have bad days. But this shocking statistic is real. 75% of Americans consider every third day to be a bad day. Every third day to be a bad day. And here's what I mean by that. You get a flat tire on your way to work. Some of you had some trouble this morning, right? What happened to you, Caitlin? Left your lights on and the battery was dead, so you had to get a jump start. So is this a bad day for you?
I'm pretty optimistic.
Pretty optimistic, you're over it. Jordan, you had a flat tire today, right? Ginger, what happened to you?
Yeah, I was good.
Oh, you were good? Megan, anything happened to you?
Crazy kids.
Crazy kids? Okay, so we all have things, we all have stuff. Schmidt happens, right? It happens. And those things happen in our day, and for most Americans, they let it ruin their whole day. Caitlin, you could have called Paul and said, look, my car won't start, I'm not coming in, I can't get the service people, they won't come because of COVID, it's a nightmare. So I want to give you a bonus word that can change your life. And I don't think that this is on the sheet here. Yeah, it's not. That's why I called it a bonus word. There's a word that I want you to use anytime you have difficulty. The last time I was in Charleston, South Carolina, it was coming into the airport. And I got to the airport and I had rented a car, so I went to the rental car counter. And the young lady behind the counter, there was a long line at the rental car counter. And all these people were getting disgruntled. If you travel a lot, you run into a lot of disgruntled people, right? People just get mad and angry, and usually, sadly, they take it out on who? The person least likely to be able to be responsible for the problem or the solution. The gate agent, the maintenance supervisor, whatever. I had a flight delay coming here yesterday, and the plane was delayed by an hour. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to miss my connection in Minneapolis. I'm not going to get to the Saga engagement. I'm freaking out. But then I remembered my bonus word. And when I was in the rental car counter in Charleston, I got up to the counter and I could see she was just frazzled. She was sweating a little bit and and I looked at her and I smiled and I said, "How's your day going?" She said, "Oh, honey, if you only knew." And I said, "I've heard. I hear all of these people treating you so poorly." I said, "I'm here to pick up my car." She said, "Well, as you probably heard, we don't have any cars right now. We ran out." And any Seinfeld fans? Ever see Seinfeld? Okay. So instantly I went back to the Seinfeld episode, and apparently the video won't play here, but the audio will. I went back to this and I literally role-played this with her. I asked her, "Have you ever seen Seinfeld?" She said, "Yes, I have." And so I role-played this with her. Did you take it?
I don't understand. I made a reservation.
Oh, what's going on?
Yes. I don't understand. I made a reservation. Do you have my reservation?
Yes, we do. Unfortunately, we ran out of cars.
But the reservation keeps the car here. That's why you have the reservation.
I know why we have reservations.
I don't think you do. If you did, I'd have a car. See, you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important part of the reservation, the holding. Anybody can just take them.
Little routine with her, and it actually started the people behind us laughing a little bit and chuckling a little bit. And it was a Hertz rental counter, and she said, they didn't have any cars, and they were waiting for Avis to bring some over so that they could cover their overflow. And after I did this with her, she leaned into me and she said, "Honey, I've got a couple of premium cars in the back. I'm just going to upgrade you. Don't let anybody know. Here's the keys. Go get it." Awesome. And so by treating her with respect, with dignity, with empathy, with understanding, and by treating her like a human being rather than somebody that was the cause of the worst day in my life, it wasn't even close to the worst day in my life. So I was able to turn that situation around, not only for me, but for her. And what was it based on? It was based on attitude. So the magic word I want you to think about, so the next time something happens to you, my wife and I do this all the time. When anything bad happens, I don't care how bad it is. So yesterday, when my flight is delayed, I went up to the gate agent and she said, "Well, the flight's delayed. We don't know what's going on." And I said, "That's inconvenient." That's the word. Inconvenient. Anytime something bad happens to you, just say, "That's inconvenient," because what that does is it neutralizes all the negativity. "Oh my God, this is the worst day of my life. I'll never get to Saga. I'll never get to do this. I'll never get a car. I'll never get to my tire's flat. My car won't start. It's the worst day ever. I can't." Just say, "That's inconvenient." And first of all, it probably should make you chuckle because you'll remember this day. Don't remember the guy, but remember his words. That's inconvenient. Try that next time something bad happens to you or something unfortunate happens to you. And even, I'm going to go so far as to say even medical issues, even really big problems, that's inconvenient. Because if you think about it in the span of your life, you're going to live, 80, 85 years, maybe more, maybe less. But in the span of your life, one single day, one event on one single day cannot ruin your life. It can impact your life, and some can impact far more than others. But just use the word inconvenient the next time something happens. See, there are 3 vibes that you have to take into client engagements. And I hope you're experiencing these vibes from me this morning. But the 3 vibes are, I'm happy to be here, I know what I'm talking about, and I love what I'm doing. Can you feel that from me this morning? Does it feel like I'm happy to be here? Does it feel like I know what I'm talking about? And does it look like I love what I'm doing? And that's exhibited by your personality. It's exhibited by the way you carry yourself. If I come in and say, "Hi, I'm here to help you," it's all attitude. Attitude. Concept number 2, know what your customers want. And it's not what you think. We are privy at the RAB to lots and lots of research, and we like to share that with you. And at some point in the future, regardless of the market you're in, I'd like you to write down 800-232-3131. 800-232-3131. Market managers and sales managers listening, I encourage you every 6 months to ask Brooke Williams or Dolores Nolan to conduct a member benefits webinar for you. They are absolutely free. They take 30 to 40 minutes, and they will run through everything that's available on the RAB website or at the RAB that can help you do what you do better. Our primary focus is to help you sell more and be more successful. And so member benefits webinars are critical every 6 months because we change things so much. Imagine if you did a member benefits webinar in January, it's now July. I can tell you that our whole focus of business has been on COVID relief, how to do this. We've gone from webinars once a month to webinars twice a week. We've gone from charging for our webinars to making them free to members. I mean, we've completely rethought our business plan, as I'm sure many of you have. In a COVID world, you relook at how you're doing things and look for efficiencies. So know what your customer wants. And one of those pieces of research is On Brand Magazine in March this year published the CMO's top 3 metrics. In the marketing world, they call them KPIs, key performance initiatives. I had to remember that and learn that a few times because I wasn't in that world. I didn't go to Harvard or Stanford. I didn't know well, our KPIs are. Why don't you just tell me what your focus is? But KPIs, key performance initiatives, used to determine marketing success. Key word there, marketing success. How many of you want to be successful in your marketing strategies? We all do, right? Well, let's know how they're judging us. They want new customer acquisition, social media engagement, qualitative feedback from customers. So they want engagement. They want a reach, they want targeting, and they want engagement. Those are the 3 things they're looking. And so if that's the case, doesn't it make sense to build our sales arguments and our sales strategies around those key performance initiatives? Now, they may be different in your local market with your local clients, but I bet they're all looking for new customers. I bet they're looking for some sort of engagement. Some of them have social media strategies, some of them don't. All right, concept number 3, your customers are abnormal people. Anybody laugh at that? Your customers are abnormal people. I know my customers are abnormal people, and I'm fumbling over here to find my wallet. Your customers are abnormal people, and here's what I mean by that. How many of you have kids? Anybody have kids? Okay. You drive down the road listening to the radio, and the commercials come on. What do the kids want to do? They want to flip the station, right? Go to another station. What do we want to do as salespeople? Hold on. Turn that up. Turn that. Oh, they're advertising. We are abnormal consumers of media. You have to know that. Your clients are abnormal consumers of media, particularly if they're investing in it. You're sitting in front of the TV watching prime time with your spouse, partner, or friend, and a commercial comes on, and the friend wants to get up and go get popcorn or turn the channel, and you go, wait. That idiot told me they didn't have any budget. And they're on television. So Phil Robbins was one of my first general managers that I worked for, and he used to do this little trick called the $20 trick. So he would go in, and this was back in the 80s. So he would go into a client with the morning newspaper. And car dealers are notorious for this. And he would put the newspaper down and he would say, find your ad. Do you know where your ad was? And the car dealer would say, yeah, it's on page 3, sports section, bottom right. And he was right. There it is. The Toyota-thon is on. The RAV4 for $179 a month. And Phil would show them that ad. They would talk about that ad, and they would think about that ad. And then Phil would pull out the $20 bill. And you can't see me on camera, but I do have a $20 bill here for anybody in the room that can tell me who is having a Black Friday sale. Nobody? I've never had to give up this 20. It's so fun. But on that same page, on the left-hand side, was the Leicester Public Library doing a Black Friday sale. Now, you didn't recognize that because I drew your attention to the Toyota ad because you're the Toyota dealer. We look at the ads. You know what normal people do when they read a newspaper? What do they read? The articles. Yeah. They read the articles. They don't pay attention oftentimes to the ads unless something happens and they need something. So I've never had to give up the 20. Phil never had to give up the 20. And that's because nobody ever pays attention to what else is on the page. And I would have even given extra credit if you could tell me the new doctor's name at the orthopedic and spine physical therapy place. But we don't consume media that way. And so our customers don't consume media that way. They're abnormal people. They ignore the ads, Greg says, and he's absolutely right. Customers ignore the ads unless they are relevant to them. And if your battery is dead and you see an auto parts store with a battery ad, ooh, you might pay attention to that. Your subconscious will pick up on it because you have a need for a new battery. Concept number 4, the rules of advertising. It's kind of important to know the rules if you're going to sell it, right? Rule number 1 of advertising is people do not buy products and services. What? People do not buy products and services. This is going to hurt. I want you to think of the last 5 ads you wrote. How many of those ads focused on product or service? Chances are 90% of them did. But people don't buy products and services. So what do they buy? If they don't buy products and services, what do they buy? They buy what the product or service does for them. They buy what the product or service does for them. Caitlin didn't want to buy a battery. She needed to get to work. So a battery was the way to get there. People buy what the product or service does for them. Kind of important to know if you're writing ads, right? You have to write it from the customer's perspective. Remember, it was Peter Drucker who said, the customer rarely buys what the business thinks it's selling. We think we're selling advertising, but that's not what they're buying. They're buying what advertising does for them. So we need to focus our attention on what advertising does for them. And here's the harsh, really harsh reality, and I hope Ed's not watching right now. People do not respond to ads. Shocking, isn't it? We all make our livings selling some form of advertising, and people don't respond to ads. Wow, that hurts. What do they respond to? Solutions to their problems. People respond to needs, not to ads. People respond to needs, not to ads. Caitlin was a perfect example today. Your car wouldn't start. What did you do?
I had jumper cables.
Oh, you had jumper cables. Okay, if you were out on the road, what would you have done?
Googled.
You would have Googled a business that could help you get your car started. But what if every day for the last 3 years you've heard of Tony's Auto, Tony's Auto, Tony's Auto, Tony's Auto, Tony's Auto, and then your car breaks down, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Tony's Auto. You don't have to Google. You don't have to Google. So people respond to needs, they don't respond to ads. And concept number 5 is a concept called triggering events. Triggering events are what start the buying process. If we knew if people did respond to ads, we could emphatically charge 10 times what we're charging right now, because we would know that people will hear an ad and then go buy a product. But that's not how it works. How many ads did you hear on your way into the office this morning? Probably a few. And how many of you stopped and bought the product before you got here? Nobody? Okay, people don't respond to ads, they respond to needs, and triggering events start the buying process. A triggering event is this. You get into an accident. Boom, you're into an accident. Now what do you need? You need your insurance provider, you need auto body repair, you might need medical attention, you might need a lawyer. All of these things happen because of a triggering event. And when the triggering event happens, that's when the need arises. And when the need arises is when you start thinking in that mental Rolodex. For those of you that are younger, it was a little thing we put on our desk that rolled and had names on it. It was not like your contacts in your phone, it was actual cards. Your mental Rolodex in your mind starts thinking, who do I know that does this? Who's the guy? Who's the gal? Who's the person that does this service that I need now? And so let's talk about advertising planting seeds. Advertising just puts those seeds out there. Every spring in Wisconsin, because we have a winter, every spring in Wisconsin, there's brown everywhere. But we know, because we planted the seeds, that when the sun comes and it warms up beyond sub-zero temperatures, that this little thing called greenery is going to start growing. And that's what advertising is. Advertising plants those seeds, and then the triggering events are like the water, and they make the sprouts come out. So let's take a look at the customer buying cycle. The customer buying cycle is very simple. Now, you've probably seen a whole bunch of different versions of this. You've seen the sales funnel, you've seen AIDA, which we'll talk about, but I'm going to just nail it in 4 little easy to use components. The first thing that happens is they discover a need. What happens? How do they discover a need? What is it? What do we call that? No. In the consumer buying world, what do we call discovering the need? The triggering event allows them to discover a need. Then what they do is they evaluate the options. So Caitlin would have Googled for a car repair shop because nothing is in her mind that comes to mind about who could take care of that problem. So she would have Googled it to evaluate the options. Now, some of you have a car repair shop on your speed dial and know who you're going to call, and it's not Ghostbusters, but you'll start evaluating all of these options. Do I want to call this one another kind of high price? Do I want to call this one? Well, they're always available. Do I want to buy it here? And so you evaluate the options, but you only start evaluating options after you've discovered the need. Then you resolve your doubts. You resolve the doubts about the option you've selected. You test your theory. Okay, I'm going to buy a new car. I went to this dealership. I went to this dealership. Now I have to evaluate my options. Anybody an HGTV fan like I am? I love Beachfront Bargain Hunter. Okay, so what happens is they take these couples out to the beach, and for whatever reason, I've never bought a house like this, they only show them 3 properties and then make them pick. I mean, the last time I bought a house, I think I walked through 72 houses. But they take them through these 3 houses, and then they have this really intimate discussion. The couple goes to dinner and has overlooking the water, and they're having this conversation. Well, the first house had this, this, and this going for it. The second house had this, this, and this going, and you're supposed to, and so then they say, so I think we should really pick commercial break, right? Because it keeps you on the edge of your seat. So we all go through this process of resolving doubts, and then we make a buying decision. This is the easiest and simplest way I can put it together is Christine is already using my stuff here. Wow, she's got it. You got it, Christine. I'll be sharing that in a minute. Anyway, you buy after you've evaluated your options, the triggering event has occurred, you've discovered the need, evaluate options, resolve doubts, and then you buy. Now this process can happen in 30 seconds. Ever stand at the grocery store in the line and the checkout where those evil people put all those candies and magazines with amazing covers on them? The National Enquirer, the truth teller of all time, the National Enquirer, so-and-so's having an alien baby. Or you're sitting there as just as simple as, do I want Tic Tacs or Altoids? Do I want Tic Tacs or Altoids? And that decision happens in 60 seconds. Then there's the decisions like buying a car, which typically takes 3 to 6 months of going through this process, or buying a house. The larger the item, or the more important the item is to you, the higher the risk, the more time this will take. As I've said a couple of times, I'm a tech geek. I've got to have the latest. How many of you have iOS 14 Beta 2 on your phone right now? Jordan? All right. iOS and iPad OS 14? Yeah, see, beta testers are always looking for the latest and greatest. So we have those. It's low risk. I can always wipe the phone and start over if I have to. But those kinds of decisions, that's what motivates me. I want to be on the cutting edge of technology. I even have a Samsung phone and the Android platform because I have to know what everybody's dealing with. I tell my wife with all of this expense, it's part of my job, honey. I have to know what my sellers and my stations are using. So we make these decisions and we spend more time. Bergman has iOS 14, way to go. We make these decisions based on their importance, okay? Let's face it, it's no big deal if you buy Altoids or Tic Tacs, right? It really doesn't matter, it's a small purchase. At the end of the day, who cares? But buying an iPhone versus the new flip, you've seen that new Samsung that the screen flips. I don't think it'll work, but you can evaluate those options. But now you're talking about $1,000 purchases, and it's a little bit more important. So here's what Christine already had on the screen: be known before you're needed. The purpose of advertising is to help your clients become known before they're needed. Known before they're needed. And this is a hard thing for them to understand. And that's why, as a sustaining resource, maybe it would be important to share one of these pages or some of these pages with your clients and share the resources with them to help teach them about advertising. Here's the thing I've uncovered about clients is they know nothing about advertising. They're in business because they're passionate about making bagels. They're in business because they're passionate about dresses. They're in business because they're passionate about cars. They have no idea how to market it. So oftentimes the marketing decisions are funneled off to their 14-year-old daughter to run their Facebook and social media campaign. They have no idea what they're doing. That's where you can help them. So one of the things you can do to be a sustaining resource is take some of the materials we're sharing today and share it with your clients, because we need to teach them about advertising and marketing. And so you're free to do that. So the purpose of advertising is to help them become known before they're needed, because our mind is like a card file. And we are able to store plus or minus 7 products in any given category. Who wants to be voluntold, Paul? Okay, good. I'm going to use you. Paul, okay. Could you please name all the brands of toothpaste you can find at Costco?
Crest, Colgate, Palmolive, because of my age, Sensodyne. Crest, Colgate, Palmolive, Sensodyne.
Okay, stopped right there. He stopped at 4, right? Plus or minus 7. Can you think of any others?
No.
You can't?
I really can't.
You know there are 42 brands of toothpaste on the shelf at Costco? Arm & Hammer, Pepsodent, Close Up. There's a new one, this black charcoal type stuff that's supposed to teeth whiten. So I have done this over and over and over and tested people in every demographic, in every market, in every region, and nobody can come up with any more than 4 or 5 items. Imagine if you're Close Up. What's the chance of Paul buying Close Up? None, because it's not on his mental Rolodex. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one example of a difference. When I was back in my college town of East Lansing, Michigan State University, I was doing a session there, and I asked a college student to name all the brands of beer, and he came up with 23. So that was a little unfair. But if you're not known before you're needed, when they need you, if they don't know you, how can they buy you, right? So there's a lesson for clients. Your customers have a mental Rolodex. Are you on it? We used to call this the positioning ladder. Reese and Trout wrote the book, Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind. If you're new to this business, if you've not read this book and you've been in the business 20 years, read Reese and Trout, Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind. Because the battle for market share is a battle for mind share. If you don't know the product, you can't buy the product. So you have to be known before you're needed. And this one made me scratch my head. This is the command vehicle of the Oshkosh, Wisconsin Police Department. They spent my tax dollars buying this vehicle, and they wrapped it and they logoed it with, "Know us before you need us." Wait a minute. If I'm dialing 911, do I really need to know who's on the other side of that phone call? Or do I just need to know that they're going to show up and take care of what I need done? So I don't understand what it means for a police department to be known before they're needed, but maybe in today's world, in the situation we're dealing with now in community policing, maybe it's time for police officers to become known before they're needed, and maybe that would lessen the situation and maybe weed out some of the bad ones. Concept number 6, the 4 keys of advertising. Jordan is giving me the sign that we are 4 minutes from a break. We'll take a break in 4 minutes. So let me get through the 4 keys of advertising for you. Key number 1, the 4 keys are reach, frequency, consistency, and compelling creative. I don't care if you're selling digital. I don't care if you're selling pre-roll video. I don't care if you're selling television. I don't care if you're selling Yellow Book. Do they still publish one here? Yellow Pages?
Nope.
Yeah, they still, in Fremont, Wisconsin, just north of Oshkosh, where I live, they publish the Yellow Book, and it's about a 1/4 inch thick. I mean, it's ridiculous. I remember growing up in Detroit, the Yellow Book, you had to get a dolly to carry the thing in. It was so thick. But
My dad used to sell those ads.
sell those ads, right? So reach, frequency, consistency, and compelling creative are the keys to unlocking advertising's potential. And I probably should have said this earlier, but when I talk about these concepts, I'm platform agnostic. I don't care what you sell. I don't care if you sell radio. I don't care if you sell television. I don't care if you sell digital. These rules apply to everything you do. And so you're going to find me spending only a little time talking specifically about radio today because, I mean, we are the Radio Advertising Bureau. I probably should promote radio a little bit, but there's another department for that. My job is to help you become a business consultant, a business strategist. So the 4 keys are reach, frequency, consistency, and compelling creative. Branding is, of course, being known before you're needed. Reach is the only key of the 4 keys that is negotiable. Reach is the only one that is negotiable. And what I mean by that is, how much can you afford? At Lambeau Field, the home of the Green Bay Packers, you can stand on the 50-yard line at halftime, and you'll pay $20,000 to have 60 seconds to talk to the crowd. Once. $20,000 to stand, and I think people do that more out of ego than they do about the marketing, because who doesn't want to stand on the big G at the Green Bay Packer Lambeau Field? How much can you afford? Can you afford to reach the 50,000 people? Maybe. But if you can't afford to reach them with consistency, frequency, and compelling creative, then you shouldn't be trying to reach that many people. Chuck Mefford, great friend of mine, we grew up in the Midwest family together. I did some work with him at Brandsformation. He talks about cups. People try to fill these advertising cups. The average business is trying to fill 7 to 9 cups. And so what happens is they put so little in the cup. You know what happens to water, right? If there's not much of it, it evaporates. It's the same thing that happens to advertising. If there's too little of it, it evaporates. So what Chuck talks about and what we talk about is you have to dominate. You have to dominate, and that's where the second key comes in, frequency. You need a frequency of 3 to 4 times a week. Now, for those of you new to the business, that doesn't mean 3 to 4 ads a week. That means how many times the average listener to your station will hear the ad. And you want them to hear it 3 or 4 times. I could get into the math. Pierre Bouvard and Stephen Marks wrote a book back in 1980s called Optimum Effective Scheduling. Paul's the only one that's shaking his head because we remember that. But it was this real mathy book. And let's face it, you don't get into sales because you like math. You get into sales because you like creativity. But it was this real mathy book, and programmers could understand this. But what it did is it took this formula of your time spent listening, your quarter hour, and your cum audience, and it mashed it all together. And based on the outcome, it came up with what the average number of commercials would be to hit the average audience member 3 to 4 times a week. Now, in my experience, on a music station, that's somewhere between 21 and 25 ads a week. On a spoken word station, sports, news, talk, it's more like 16 to 18. And the reason it is because they listen longer. So if you're selling schedules that you're trying to build brands, you want to focus on a frequency of 3 to 4 times a week. That's what the psychologists tell us it takes to change behavior. 3 to 4 times exposure over a long period of time. One of those psychologists is this good-looking man. His name is Herman Ebbinghaus. This will be on the test. Write that down. I'm kidding. Herman Ebbinghaus. In 1896, Herman Ebbinghaus developed this philosophy called the Ebbinghaus curve of forgetting. The Ebbinghaus curve of forgetting. And what it means is that when you hear information the first time, your immediate recall is 100%. Jordan, what's the name of the German psychologist? Oh, Jordan's already missed it. Ginger, what's the name of the German psychologist? Herman. Paul, what's his name?
Herman Ebbinghaus.
Herman Ebbinghaus. Caitlin? Herman Ebbinghaus, right? So now you got a frequency of 3. Maybe you'll remember that. Now, if I were to come back in 30 days and ask you the name of the German psychologist, only 20% of you would be able to come up with the name. Now, the reality is only 20% of you are going to be able to remember what we did today and what we talked about. You know what you'll remember? You'll remember the one or two things that really resonated with you because it's where you're at right now. And what I would encourage you to do, I used to get offended at that, but as a trainer, you know, you go out and do these full day sessions and people come up to you at the beginning and say, if I can get one good idea, I got 375. Why don't I just tell you the one good idea and we can save us both time? But that's how people consume information. That's how they learn. I'm asking you to drink water from a fire hose right now. So what I encourage you to do is, because this is being recorded, because you'll have the workbook, because you'll have the slide deck, is review it from time to time. I can tell you right now that six months from now, I could come back and do the exact same seminar word for word, and you would learn something completely different than you're learning today. Because we all learn based on where we're at, and where we're at changes. In the National Speakers Association, our joke is that it's easier to get a new audience than it is to write a new speech. So you have the same audience, and market managers and sales managers have the biggest task in the world, because they're the same audience every week, and you're trying to teach them something new. And sooner or later, like my friend Jeff in Max Media Denver says, you become audio wallpaper. They hear you, but they're not listening anymore because you're the same person, which is why you bring in outside speakers. But the Ebbinghaus curve of forgetfulness says that 1 hour from now, you won't remember his name. And I'll test you on that at the end of the day. But now you're going to try to remember it, and you still won't remember it. So what's the antidote? That's bad news. The antidote to the Ebbinghaus curve of forgetting is frequency. Frequency is how you combat the forgetting curve. So the first time, you're going to lose it. The second time, you increase your odds to 60. The third time, you bump your odds up to 80. And the fourth repetition, you bump it up to 90%. And the fifth repetition, you're at 95%. So this should be your guide. This should be what you put in front of your clients every time you ask them to buy a schedule, and say, this is the kind of frequency we need to get results. You do want results, don't you? Yeah, but I can't afford that. Okay, then we can't use all of our stations. Maybe we just use this one station and dominate it. Remember, budgets, the reach is the only thing that's negotiable. You can negotiate reach. You can buy a station that has less of an audience. You can buy a day part that is not as expensive. Overnights, for instance, you can buy, usually in most markets, for $5 to $7 an ad, whereas morning drive could cost $300. So maybe your client can only afford to be on the overnights, but at that price they can dominate it, and they can run an ad an hour. So you've got to focus on domination. This is a hard concept to wrap your arms around, but you have to dominate. And the difference is where you dominate. You can dominate and be very successful. I had many clients that were very successful in overnight radio. The next key is consistency, and consistency is measured in years, not weeks. I don't know who the person is who first created the 13-week schedule, but that person should be taken out, and I don't know what we can do to them. But 13 weeks is not how we learn, right? If I said, like a good neighbor, you'll say, and if I say, we'll leave the light on for you, you'll say,
It's the Motel 6?
Motel 6. See? Why do you remember that? You remember that consistently. Okay, here, this just before the break. Who can tell me the year that State Farm started using Like a Good Neighbor, State Farm is there, and for extra credit, who was the first person who sang, wrote, and produced their jingle? Paul, I'm counting on you.
I would have said in the 70s probably.
1971 is when State Farm started using Like a Good Neighbor, State Farm is there, and Barry Manilow was the original singer of the State Farm State Farm jingle. So 40 plus years is why I can say to a young person like Caitlin or a seasoned person like Paul, you like how I colored that? Seasoned person like Paul, like a good neighbor, and everybody knows State Farm. Tom Bodette from Motel 6 started in 1981. And the catchphrase, we'll leave the light on for you, was actually a mistake. He lives in Alaska. They used to send him the copy. He'd read it. And he was reading this copy, and he came up 5 seconds short, and he just, off the cuff, said, we'll leave the light on for you. and it stuck, and people, it resonated with people. So for 30 years, they've been using that. Consistency. And when your client says, I'll try it for 13 weeks, all you have to do is point to Lowe's, Home Depot, Motel 6, State Farm, McDonald's, Burger King, any of the big advertisers. None of them do 13-week schedules. I mean, they do, they buy in 13 weeks, but they are on all the time. All right, 7-minute break. 10:15 Eastern is when we will reconvene. For those of you on computers, potty break, water break, Monster energy drink break, whatever you want to do. We'll be back at 10:15. Jordan with the music. All right, we are back. No sense punishing the punctual. We said 10:15, so we're going to start at 10:15 Eastern. And if you're not here, well, you don't know. Quick review, if you could, for me on the chat screen or in the room. What one thing has stuck out for you since we started? Is there one thing that's really resonated with you more than anything?
The cycle of buying.
The cycle of buying. Okay, Ginger, the cycle of buying. On the chat box, is there a problem with
30-second delay to give the second.
Oh yeah. For those of you on the internet in the building, you can hear me yelling in the upstairs and wondering why it's not coming on your screen. There's about a 30-second delay between what we're doing here live in the room and what you're seeing on YouTube. So most of you won't notice that, but a couple of people in the building do. So what's your number one takeaway from what we've talked about this morning? Ginger's was the cycle of buying, the consumer buying cycle. Caitlin, how about you?
One on what type of seller do you want to be?
Okay.
Yes.
The 4 levels of selling, what type of selling. See, the interesting thing about this is everybody will have a different takeaway because you are all coming at it from a different perspective. Alex says, I like, is that Alex Names? Or is that? Okay, so Alex, at Alex Names, tell me what your first name is because I can't tell from the handle. Like the idea of the business strategist, might change the business cards. Bergman likes the cycle of buying. Andrew, if your clients were asked who the media expert in town was, would they say you? That goes back to the 3rd and 4th level selling. Knowing what type of seller you are, Nikki, and want to be. So good. I'm glad that various things are resonating with you, and it goes to my point of 6 months from now we could do the exact same seminar and you'd get something completely different. So my encouragement, my hope, and I know that hope is not a strategy. It's one of my quotes. Hope is not a strategy. But one of my hopes is that you will review this material frequently and consistency, because frequency and consistency not only apply to advertising and changing human behavior from a consumption standpoint, but frequency and consistency also apply to learning. And that's why you need to consistently and frequently expose yourself to new information. Al Reese, from the book that I talked about earlier, Reese and Trout's Positioning and the New Positioning, says that a powerful brand is not built by creativity. Don't tell Yaman Koskin that. A powerful brand is not built by creativity. A powerful brand is built by consistency year after year after year. We're going to talk about creativity later, and I know that you have an unfair advantage, a secret weapon called Yaman Koskin and his company Yamaner Creative, and what fantastic work they do. They just did some work for us at the RAB on building trust. We did a social media campaign, or we have an audio campaign, thanks to Yaman and his team, on our website now that you can customize for your station, add your station imaging and whatever, and it talks about trust and how survey after survey says that radio in the local market is trusted beyond anything else. And of course, this is a response to advertisers boycotting Facebook and the world falling apart on Facebook and poor Mark Zuckerberg, or rich Mark Zuckerberg, depending on how you look at that. And the 4th key is compelling creative does it sell. And again, you have that secret weapon of Yaman Koskin, so you have an opportunity that some don't, and I would encourage you to use it. As we talk about creativity later, I'm going to act like you don't have a service that you can go to and get great copy. I'm going to share with you some of the techniques about creative, because some of you may be doing it on your own. Some of you may be, you certainly need to be able to identify good creative, and if Yaman does it, you know it's fantastic creative. Can you tell me the name of the, what, did I miss?
Remind the new people, Yaman is Cash by Creative.
Oh, Cash by Creative, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Caitlin, what's the name of that German psychologist?
Herman something.
Herman something. Ginger?
Yeah, Herman.
Herman. Okay. You lost it too? See? Oh, you got it? Okay. So Herman Ebbinghaus. All right, so I think I missed number 7 there for you on page 8. Advertising program is like an exercise program. You should never start either with the intention of stopping. As much as I tried, as much as I thought it was worth it, I would go to the gym every January, and like most people, by January 15th, I stopped going to the gym. You can't go to the gym and get on an elliptical once for 45 minutes and say, there, I've done it, I'm in shape. But this year I really committed to it. Since the radio show last year to today, I've committed to my personal health, because I'm getting to that age where you got to pay attention to that. I've actually lost 100 pounds in the last year. I can't imagine what I looked like before, and am horrified as I look at old pictures. I looked like a Wisconsin cow. But I've lost 100 pounds in the last year, and it's because I focused my attention on what was important. And so you have to focus your attention if you're going to invest in advertising. You have to do it consistently and religiously, and you have to do it over the long haul. So don't ever start I would much rather have you walk away from a client who's not willing to do it for a year and say, I don't want to take your money because I'm a business strategist and I don't want you to fail. And what I know about advertising is, unless it's done frequently and consistently with compelling creative, it's not going to work. And the last thing I can have you do, and I would actually use this as a new seller, I'd say the last thing I want you to be doing is going to your Kiwanis Club or your Rotary Club and telling people you tried radio once and it didn't work. And then you'll say, yeah, Jeff Schmidt is the one who sold me radio. So I'd rather walk away from it and tell you, no, I'm not going to take your money. And Paul was telling a story about a law firm that he was dealing with that basically he had the same kind of conversation, that I'm not going to take your money unless you're willing to do it this way. You have to be the expert, and that means you have to guide them, and that means you have to have standards and boundaries outside of which you will not operate. And I know we're all under intense pressure to hit budgets. I know we're all under intense pressure to get revenue on the books, but it's better to get revenue on the books over the long term than it is to take the short-term deal that will actually cost you twice, because that client will be unhappy and they'll tell 10 friends that they're unhappy. So an advertising program is like an exercise program. You never begin any with the intention of stopping. And number 7 is you have to be that source of business advantage for your clients. That's concept number 7. Be a source of business intelligence, business advantage for your clients. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that your clients need information. Your clients are busy running their car dealership, running their restaurant, running their beauty salon, running their nail salon, running their vape shop, running their CBD oil store, running their dispensary. Wait, is that legal in this state?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. So in some states I can say dispensary, but your clients are busy running their business. And this was really, this first car dealer that I worked with really dramatized this for me. I used to, when I was in this business, and again, I'm going to age myself, but I used to subscribe to magazines that would come to my office. I would subscribe to Automotive News, Funeral Directors Weekly, Power Tool Magazine, Restaurant News, Furniture Today. And I would take articles from these publications into clients. And I would say, I saw this article about this, and I did that to a car dealer once. I was actually in his waiting room, waiting for the meeting, and I was thumbing through the latest automotive news that was on the coffee table. And I literally ripped the article out and took it into him. And I said, did you know that the customer buying cycle has doubled now? And 80% of the shopping starts online? Were you aware of that? He said, let me see that article. He said, where'd you find that? I said, Automotive News, it's on your front desk. Oh, I haven't had a chance to read that one yet. Okay, how many of us read Radio Inc.? Unless we're reading the emails. How many of us read Inside Radio or any other publication about our business? We tend not to read information about our business. We tend to get too busy doing it. So you can be a source of business advantage and intelligence by reading these publications. Now here's the good news. You don't have to subscribe to them and have them all that messy ink all over your fingers. All you have to do is subscribe to their email newsletters. Automotive News has an email newsletter. One of my favorite, if you call on car dealers, is called dealermarketingmagazine.com. Dealermarketingmagazine.com. Go there and sign up for their newsletter. National Automobile Dealers Association has a daily update of headlines going on in the industry. Here's the thing about these publications, and there's furniture today, there's restaurant news. Every category of business has a publication. What do you read in those publications? What are you learning about when you read those publications? Not a trick question. What are you learning? What are you learning? You're learning about the industry and their challenges, concerns, and problems. Perfect. You are learning if you read automotive news for 3 days in a row, you'll know what your car dealer is dealing with. Right now, what's their number one concern?
Lack of new inventory.
Lack of inventory. So what is that doing? That lack of new inventory is driving used car sales up and used car values up. Very good friend of mine runs a car dealership. I've known him for all my life. He and I go to the same church, and he teaches me all the time about automotive and anything new in the automotive. So I called him last week. I said, Brad, what's your 90-day supply? Because in the car business, if you're running a new car store, you want to have 90 to 120 days of new car inventory on the lot. And that means you have enough inventory to last you 90 days under normal buying cycles. I said, what's your 90-day supply? He said 15 days right now. So that's how hard they're being hit. So he's looking for dealer trades, he's looking for used cars, and he said, Jeff, it's literally a buying frenzy. I can't keep up. My sellers are selling like crazy, but I'm running out of inventory. June, this is July, June of this year, he had a record month in profits. Record. In the midst of COVID. Who's buying cars? Apparently everybody. There's a lot of pent-up demand. So you can be that source of business advantage. Imagine going into a car dealer and say, what's your 90-day supply? Because the other thing you learn by reading these trade publications and emails is you learn the lingo. For instance, what's a customer called in a car dealership? An up. Okay, what's that mean? That doesn't make sense. Well, that comes back to 1970-ish, where all the salespeople were sitting in the conference room and somebody new would come up on the lot and the manager would say, you're up. And that salesperson would go out and call on him. Now at Brad's store, you know what the customers are called? Guests. They're called guests today. They're no longer called ups. There's a whole dictionary of dealer lingo on RAB.com. We have a new section called the Automotive Toolkit. And this dictionary has been cultivated by years and years and years of calling on car dealers and getting input from car dealers. And so you can use that as a cheat sheet. You can find out what a B-back is, and you can find out what, all these different terminologies. Every industry has its own terminology, including us, right? So we have traffic. Well, in a lot of places, traffic means what's going on the roads. In our business, traffic is the process of taking the commercial from the client through the business office on the air. That's trafficking the commercial, right? We sell spots. Well, spots are something you want to avoid on your shirt, but we sell spots. Those are the types of things we have as our own lingo. And every restaurant, every power tool dealer, they all have their own lingo. So I would encourage you to at least subscribe to these email newsletters and figure that out. So we're talking about the first step, which is prospecting. The old way of prospecting was picking up the phone, making a phone call, or stopping in and making a cold call, knocking on doors. And we would say things like, I'm just stopping by, I'd like to learn about your business, I have an idea to help you. That's my favorite. You call somebody you've never met, never done anything with, and you say, hi, Paul, it's Jeff Schmidt calling from the Charlotte Radio Group. I have an idea to help your business. Can we meet? Now, in the 80s, that worked. I did it successfully several times. And then client would say, yeah, come on in. And I hang up the phone. And I said, now I got to come up with the idea. But if I did that today, Paul would say, you've never met me, or at least he'd think it. You've never met me. I've never talked to you. How can you possibly have an idea that will be relevant to me? So the tricks we used to use in the 80s, just stopping by, even I'd like to learn about your business, You know, the consultant sell started, as I mentioned earlier, with Don Beveridge in the 80s, and that was the process of doing what we called a customer needs analysis. As Don Beveridge would say, customer needs analysis, customer needs analysis. And that was the process of asking questions. So my first car dealer, hello, Mr. Hausauer, this is Jeff Schmidt calling from WMGV Radio. I would like to stop by and meet with you for 15 minutes and learn about your business, because once I learn about your business, I might be able to develop a plan to improve it. Are you interested? And then back in the 80s, they'd said, oh, that's a new approach. You're not calling to pitch me the package of the month. You're calling to learn about my business. Well, today, they expect you to know about their business. They expect you to know and have information to trade when you walk in the door. So the stakes are much higher today. As a senior vice president, and I don't say that with arrogance, it's just my title, as the senior vice president of the Radio Advertising Bureau's Professional Development Department, I get calls from time to time. I freely admit I'm an abnormal person, but whenever I encounter a salesperson, guess what I do? I evaluate them. All of life, and my wife and kids go crazy about this because it happens all the time, all of life to me is a sales seminar. There's always something to learn, like this call.
Hey Jeff, this is John Hartz with Streambox. I previously was speaking with John Potter. However, he has, retired for a couple months. He was saying for like a streaming video transportation solution, you guys went with Dcast, and you guys have a contract with them. Therefore, I was just looking to get in touch with you and go over, how everything's going with that.
Here's the best part. Wait till he gets to his phone number.
Of what Streambox could offer. Feel free to give me a call back here at 206-956-0054, extension 136. Again, this is John at 206-956-0544, extension 136. Thank you. Bye.
That is a prospecting call that I received. Now, of course, I immediately called him back, and we're doing business. I did a 50,000. Of course not. He called twice. That was the first call. That's what you're up against today. That's the kind of prospecting call. So the next time you're sitting at that desk and your sweat is pouring off your forehead because you're so afraid to make the call, recognize that that's your competition. You are so much better than that. You are so much better than that. So how do we find these prospects? Well, we make cold calls. Hopefully we do it better than that. Or we use what's called, this used to happen in our building, it's called the Charles Darwin list. It's the list, Caitlin, you are most likely to be getting the Charles Darwin list. It's the list that evolved from all the other sellers that couldn't get them sold. So there are accounts that are on the account list, but nobody could get them sold. So let's give them to Caitlin. Caitlin can do it. That's the Charles Darwin list. Welcome to sales, right? Well, that's not where you want to start your prospecting on the Darwin list. You want to start your prospecting. First of all, why do you want to prospect? Why do we prospect for new business? We prospect for new business because we want to create new business and we want to replace lost business. Your average annual attrition rate, as good as you are, you can be a top-notch level 4 seller, and your average annual attrition rate will be between 20 and 35%. And throw a COVID world into that, and your attrition rate is uncalculable right now. So this is why we prospect for business. Why else? To grow your income at a faster pace than your station's rates are growing. The one sad thing about our industry, and it may be different here, but the one sad thing about our industry is we don't change prices very often. I can tell you that I sold radio commercials in a market for $45 an ad back in 1987. Today, those commercials are still selling for $45 to $47 an ad. Everything else has changed. Business costs have gone up, but we don't change the price of our ads. We should be doing it annually. Ed and Chris are going, yes, tell them, preach it. But it's difficult, right? It's difficult to raise the price. I used to work for this little company called Cumulus. Paul may be familiar with it. And there was a guy there by the name of Peter Remington. And we coined the phrase Remington math, Because Peter would call and say, you know, if you charged each of your clients $1 more, you'd have $40,000 more per month. It's pretty easy, isn't it? And I'd say, yeah, come show us how to do it, Peter. Because that's Remington math. It's easy on paper, right? But it's much more difficult to get them to buy more. We'll talk about that, or pay more. So if you want to grow your income faster than the station is growing rates, you've got to find new business. And there's got to be a better way than what John, whatever his name was, telling me that my predecessor had retired. Hello, Captain Obvious. You know, I know he retired. So there is a better way. Prospecting means new business. This is the harsh reality. If you don't prospect, you have no new business. Now, we're in a COVID world. So even the sellers who have been selling for 30 years are prospecting today. The first thing to go when you grow into that level 4 seller of learning, where you're unconsciously competent, the first thing that takes a back seat is prospecting. You're too busy servicing. You're too busy working with your client. And then something happens, catastrophic. Your top client, J.C. Penney, files for bankruptcy and goes out of business, and they were spending a lot of money with you. Then you go, oh my God, what am I going to do? And Phil Fisher says, that's your problem. What's their problem? So you have to prospect to always replace that new business. And now in a COVID world, it's easier to say that because we know what we're dealing with. The world fell apart in mid-March. Everything went to the ground. I forgot to mention, and I'm sorry to be kind of ADD here, we are going to take a break at noon. That's our next break, is at noon Eastern, 11 Central, 10 Mountain, 9 Pacific. Do we have anybody in Pacific time? No, because they would have to start really early, right? Okay, so we're going to take a break at noon Eastern, and that break will be your lunch break, and it's a 75-minute break. And Paul has graciously agreed to put his credit card out on the string of emails and buy everybody lunch. Well, that's not true. But we are going to take a 75-minute break for lunch at noon. That's payback for what you said the other day when I was ordering my lunch. All right, so prospecting, you've constantly got to be looking. If you saw the Glenn Gary movie, Alec Baldwin he used the term ABC, always be closing. Well, I've changed that. It's always be prospecting. Always be prospecting. I told you before that when I'm out, everything that I encounter is a sales story waiting to happen, a teachable moment waiting to happen. I'm always prospecting for sales stories. That's what I share now. That's what I do now. So I'm always looking for them. From the Bonefish restaurant I was at last night to the airplanes that I flew on the way over here, every encounter I have with a salesperson or somebody in that capacity is an opportunity for me to pull something out of it to share with others. So everything you do is an opportunity for prospecting and finding new business. Let's face it, COVID-19, New York City, the statistic is that half of the restaurants that had to close for COVID won't reopen. There are 4 restaurants in my town, Fremont, and one of them didn't reopen. Couldn't. But people are going out of business. And the business that you have on the books right now will just vanish. It'll go away. 20 to 35% of it. So you have to be prospecting. Stephen Covey wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read it, get it on your Kindle, get the audiobook, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The one takeaway from this book, and when I share a book, I always give you a takeaway. The one takeaway is start with the end in mind. For me, when I started in sales, the end was money. I got into sales because I wanted to make money, right? My dad had a good job and I was finally out of college and my mom wanted me to be a preacher or a lawyer and I came home and said, I'm going to sell radio. Guess how that went over. But I was motivated by money. And one of my many mentors in life, my favorite mentor, Bill Mann, this was just a month ago in Madison, we were doing a retirement party. Boy, you want to start feeling old, see your mentors getting older and older. But Bill Mann was my mentor, and when I started in sales, he said, what do you want to make this year? That's how he started the goal-setting process. What do you want to make this year? And I said, Bill, I want to make $100,000. Because that's what my dad was making, right? And I'm 19, just out of college. It sounded like a good number to me. He said, all right, let's do some math. And we did the backwards calculation based on the commission rates and everything at the time, I would have to sell $512,000 worth of advertising to make $100,000. And I said, now I was a morning man, right? I was a morning show host, news talk format, full of ego and arrogance. And I said, well, that doesn't sound too hard. Well, I just need to find a client to spend $500,000 with me. He said, yeah, not exactly. I said, oh, okay, 2 clients to spend a couple $100,000. Not exactly. So 4 clients to spend $50,000. You're getting closer. 8 clients to spend $25,000. Now you're in the reality. So we did all of this math backwards, and I knew that if I found 8 clients to spend X amount of dollars, I would make $100,000. And here was the kicker that Bill asked. What would you do if you made $100,000? I'd buy a Mercedes S500. What color? Oh, burgundy with the biscuit leather interior. And the moonroof that had the window all the time. What kind of tires would you put on it? What kind of wheels would you put? Do you have a picture of it? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. I pulled it up on the internet. And he said, print that out. And he printed it out and he said, put that on your cubicle wall. And every day look at what it is you're working for. Now, okay, give me a little slack here. I was 19 years old. Materialism was important to me at that point. It was the Rolexes, it was the Armani suits, and it was the Mercedes. I said I went into it for money. I didn't say I went into it for the right reason. Obviously, I've grown up and found that those things are empty without other things in your life. But that's how Bill started. What's the end game here for you? Phil Fisher always said, that's your problem, what's theirs? Bill Mann said, what's in it for you? And he had a unique way. The year after that, of course, I did hit my goal, and much to the chagrin of the rest of the sellers on the team, this morning man that they listened to, who's never been in sales, became the #1 biller in his first year, ticked them all off. The next year, Bill said, what do you want this year? 36 aft cabin Carver, big 36-foot boat you could live on. And he said, get the picture. And so those are the types of things that made a difference to me at that point in my life. But the point is, you start with the end in mind. What is in it for you? Today, it's what can I give my grandkids? How can I make their lives better? We just did some remodeling of the house, not for us, but so that the grandkids had a more fun place to play. I'm in the process of becoming YouTube certified as a builder. That's what my son calls it. You watch the YouTube video. I'm building them a little log cabin in the back of our property to play in. So, I mean, those are the things that mean something to me now. So when we're back to prospecting, let's talk about smart prospecting. Smart prospecting is what we all want to do. You don't want to be like the guy from Streamblocks who just calls blindly without any information. I got an email this week from a guy who said, blah, 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 started with the email with all the things about him, and then his last paragraph was the best. And I don't know if you saw my article in Radio Sales Today about it, but his last paragraph was, nothing formal or prepared, just want a chance to get to know you. Wait, what? You don't have anything prepared and you want to talk, you want me to take my time to meet with you? So let's do some smart prospecting. And that means the S is strategic. Who are you calling on and why? You want to be calling on the right people. And there's a reason and some tools that I'm going to share with you on how to develop that. Who are the right people? Methodical is that consistency piece. You've got to devote, in normal times, I would encourage you to devote 10 to 15% of your time, which probably an hour a day, to prospecting, doing nothing but prospecting activities. That doesn't mean being in front of a prospect. That means cultivating the activities that lead you to be in front of a prospect. That could mean sending seed letters. It could mean doing research. But an hour of your time out of an 8-hour day should be devoted to prospecting, consistently, methodically, and planned out. Not just haphazardly when your top client cancels, not just haphazardly when the world has a pandemic. You want to consistently prospect because you're going to lose business whether you like it or not. The A is adventurous. Have fun with it. Prospecting is not horrible. When I say prospecting in most sales settings, people get this really anguished look on their face. Oh God, I got to call on people that I don't know. I got to make it an adventure. My manager, Bill, flipped the coin for me. He said, look, I'm just going to tell you this right now. And this was back in the 80s. He said, you're going to have to call 10 people to get one person to say yes to you. So here's how I did it. And this is taking control of your own attitude. Everybody that I called that said no, I said, thank you. I really appreciate that. And they'd go, I said no, I'm not going to meet with you. I know. But it takes 9 of you to get to the one that'll say yes. So thank you for being one of the ones that said, no, you're getting me faster to a yes. That's how I framed it. That made it an adventure. Rewarding. I probably don't have to tell you that prospecting is rewarding because of what it does. It brings in new business. It replaces old business. This career that you're in, media sales or sales in general, is the only career I know of that if you want to raise, you can make it happen. Your poor programming team has to negotiate with Paul. Paul probably has to negotiate with Ed and Chris. If they want a 4% increase in their annual cost of living raise, they have to work really hard and make a strong case for it. You, 4%, that's one new client. You can double your income in the next year by simply getting new business. And it's the greatest thing in the world. The downside to that is if you're not successful at it, you're going to go hungry. So you are in total control of your income. And that has a two-sided edge to it. But I like to look at it as rewarding. And the T is targeted. This is back to strategic and targeted. That's why they're bookended. You need to target the right people. So first of all is use common sense, okay? Use common sense. Create a profile of your station's listeners. Who listens to your station? Well, if you know who listens to your stations, then you know whose customers they're likely to be, and they're a more targeted prospect to call on. Create that list of prospects who match your customers, your station's listeners. So you can develop a profile. I was the best friends with my program directors, and as a sales manager and market manager, I would ask the program directors to come to the sales meetings at least once a month and tell us about the station. And at VBO in Appleton, Oshkosh, Sally was the name of our audience. She was 42 years old, she had 2.5 kids and drove a minivan. That's how specific we made the profile of our listener. And when you have that specific of a profile, if I say 42-year-old female, 2 kids, minivan, tell me the product she needs. Tell me the product she needs.
Children's stuff?
She needs kid stuff. She needs maybe daycare. She needs a school, private school or a public school. She needs school supplies. She probably has a home, so she needs home improvements. See where this is going once you have that profile? Think of all the we do it backwards. We do it backwards. We drive down the street and say, oh, there's a new business. Let's call on them. How about starting with the end in mind, which is your listener, because the end result is you want your listener to go to their business. So back to Stephen Covey, start with the end in mind, find out who your listener is. And you all have, I'm sure, very good profiles of who your audience is by format. Again, when I started, I had an AM station that targeted 45 to 64-year-olds and an FM station that targeted 18-34. Then consolidation happened, we started buying, and I said, I can represent birth to death. I can represent everybody. It's a question of which station I'm going to put the money on in terms of that frequency. So we have some tools, you might believe that, at the RAB. It's called Consumer Behavior by Format. It's qualitative research. It's available on rab.com under the Sales Tools drop-down under Prospecting. And what it gives you is national information. I recognize that some companies, including this, do not subscribe to Nielsen, and I applaud that because I think ratings and having a rating service is the #1 killer of sales proficiency of all time, because you rely on the ratings to do the selling instead of your people and your strategies and your ideas to do the selling, but that's another day for another seminar. So develop that profile, and right now you look at this middle to late aged couple, and you can start thinking about what kind of products they would need. Now, if you're selling the latest, and I'm going to date myself, but what's the hottest jean right now that's on the market? Jeans. The hottest jeans for kids. Is there a brand? It used to be Jordache when I was growing up.
Yeah, 7.
7? Okay, so advertising 7 to them is probably not going to be a very good pitch, right? Unless you say your grandkids want this and you're going to be the hero. But typically you're not going to, but you're going to talk about vacationing, investments, cars that are of a higher price because they can afford it, second homes, RVs. Think of all the things this audience needs, which is going to be different than this audience, which is going to be your younger audience that goes to concerts and clubs and hangs out in bars and restaurants and in a post-COVID world, if we ever get to a post-COVID world. But so can you see how that makes a difference in your view of prospecting? Start with the end in mind. Who's your customer? Who's your listener? We have 2 customer bases in a radio station marketing company environment. The first is our audience. The second is our clients that buy advertising. So if you start with the end in mind, knowing that what your real job is to connect your audience to their business, that's the end goal. So if you know your audience, you can help them, your clients, reach. So you've got to do your homework. Some have local qualitative data, some have national qualitative data. We have data for you. How many of you, do you have a research department at Saga? Do you have a research department? I think you do, you just don't know it. The Radio Advertising Bureau is your research department. And I say that not arrogantly, but gleefully, because I tell everybody all the time, we are your research department. We have Annette Malave as our SVP of Insights. That is her full-time job, is to find data and information to help you do your job better. So we don't even want you to give us credit. When you go out in front of a client with a data point, say, my research department found this for you. And that also makes you sound a little better. But this consumer behavior by formatting, we used to call it the gold digger report. Let me localize it for you in the market. Star 99.7 delivers the market for Acura. This is the demographic of people who recently bought an Acura in the dark, and the green is your audience demographic breakout. Looks like a perfect match, right? So if you're selling Acura TLs, you might want to talk to them about Star 99.7. They also index very high in having purchased tire care products in the past year. So these are all on these GfK MRI reports. We can customize the reports just like this for you with that phone number. You say, I need a custom report for tire stores for Star 99.7. And what this index means, for those of you that are not statistical analytic experts, like I'm not, but I know people who are, the index means the average person in the market is 100%. So the average person who buys tire care is at 100%. But your audience is 180%. So that means your audience is 80% more likely to buy tire care products than the general market. So if I'm selling tire care products, where do I want to be? This information is available to you absolutely free for the asking as part of your RAB membership. It's updated regularly, has nothing to do with Nielsen numbers, and has everything to do with knowing your audience. Let's just go through. AC delivers Volkswagen. There's the Volkswagen curve demographic, and there's Mix 95.9's curve of demographic. Pretty good mix, right? Ha ha. See what I did there? They index high for day spa clients. If you have a hot AC, the Mix 95.9, 153% is your index for day spas. So your audience is twice as likely, basically, 50% more likely than the average consumer in the market to go to a day spa. So day spas would be a good prospect category, right? Let's keep going with this. Heaven delivers the market for Jaguar. Those folks on the religious side are really well. So look at that. It's a perfect match. So if you have a Jaguar dealer, you better be taking them to heaven. See what I did there? Here's another thing. They index at 79% more than the market to have purchased a professional cleaning service for furniture in the last year. I didn't even know that category exists. Professional furniture cleaning, that's go to Best Buy and buy new, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. But they are 79% more likely to pay for professional furniture cleaning. So if you have professional furniture cleaners in this market, they should be on heaven, right? Chuck FM delivers for Infinity. Look at the match there on Infinity. Chuck, I'm going to go faster. 50% more likely to have handheld video games. My daughter wants one of those Nintendo Switch. Can't get them. They're sold out everywhere. She wants me. She's a college professor at University of Arizona at Tucson, pursuing her doctorate degree in chemistry. She's brilliant, and she wants a Nintendo Switch. Dad, can you find me one? I've been looking everywhere. I can't. I was just hoping maybe Saga was doing a promotion, giving away a Switch that I could convince them. But 50% more likely on Chuck FM to play handheld video games. The Box, Mazda CX-5. Look at the perfect match there of the demographic breakout. And 70% more likely to attend movies. Not today, but under normal situations, to attend movies than the general public. So if you have a Marcus Theater, I don't know what your AMC or whatever they are down here, you should have them on 99.3. Country delivers the market for Honda. Now, this one didn't make sense to me because I was thinking Ford trucks, GMC trucks, and Chevy trucks, but I'll bet it's similar. But our research department pulled out Honda, so the match is pretty good. And they're 92% more likely to own an ATV or a UTV than anybody in the market. 92% more likely to own an ATV. So if you have an ATV store, they better be on the country station. So this is the other place to prospect for new business, is to start with what interests you. This is my dad. And my dad was a car guy all his life. My dad was the kind of guy who'd get in the car, just drive down the road, hear a noise and say, oh, your third cylinder is going bad. The tappets are what, and I never got that gift. But for 40 years of his life, he was at the Ford Motor Company and ran the engine plant in both Windsor and Cleveland. And so I grew up around cars. My uncles and I would race cars. I mean, not really in a racetrack, but we'd go out to the farm in Saskatchewan, and I'd get in my car and they'd get in their car, and we'd go down the road and see who could get to 130. My Uncle Ewald always used to say, yeah, she shakes a little bit at 120, but she gets over it by 125. And I always used that line with my wife, and my mom would go nuts. So obviously I had an interest in cars. So my first category that I started exploring was car dealers, because the more you know about the category, the better you're going to do calling on it. So pick your passion, tie it to the audience that you represent, and go out and work on those first. The next thing to look at is the competitors' radio stations. We used to have sales meetings every Monday where we would have people bring in their competitive listening report. We would assign a station to each seller, and they would have to listen to that station all week and write down every client, and then in the Monday morning sales meeting, they would bring that information in. There used to be these things, for any of you under 30, they used to be these things that came to your front door called a newspaper. It was this printed material, but you'd look in the newspaper and you'd find ads. Use your eyes when you're driving around. Look for buildings that are being under construction. Look not only for new construction, but for remodeling construction. Become friends with your Chamber of Commerce. Now, one of the things I did to solidify my relationship with the Chamber of Commerce is I offered to do, and this is when I was a market manager in my market, I offered to do some training on how to advertise for their members, free. So they would have these monthly Ask the Expert breakfasts, and I got on the schedule regularly to come in and teach them about advertising. And I didn't just talk about radio, I talked about, so I became the guy known for advertising. Well, what do you know when you're with the Chamber of Commerce? They have this thing called the New Business Development Department, and before the ground is broken, before the deals are signed, before the contracts are even dry, the business development director knows who's coming to town. And I would get those leads before anybody else because I had solidified that relationship. So you can do that today. Social media is a great example. During the break, Caitlin was telling us that she reached out to a huge potential client on LinkedIn and secured a meeting as a result of that. And we're all looking forward to that, and I want the feedback on that. But LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all of these social media outlets are another way to identify new prospects. Now, I will caution you that, and I'm not going to test you and I'm not going to embarrass you, but if you're using LinkedIn in that fashion, make sure your profile is up to date and current and looks good and is compelling. The biggest indicator to me of a person who doesn't care about LinkedIn is when they have that little gray square picture. They don't even have their real picture up. Okay, so you want to make sure that the profile that shows up or the words that show up when people are scanning profiles, that's your brand identity. That's your marketing. Mine says, think big, make big things happen. I've actually trademarked that now because that's one of my the things that I started way back in my career. So when you look at my LinkedIn profile, it says, think big, make big things happen. I help businesses grow. Don't use your business title. Don't use your job title. Use what your customers are buying from you, right? Start with the end in mind. We have some other tools. One of them is called the pitch. Frequently we update the pitch. This is on RAB.com. We take 3 categories and we do a deep dive. And we even give you a PowerPoint that all you really would have to do, and I don't encourage this, but all you'd really have to do is put your station logos on it. You can actually go present that to a client. It gives you ideas, it gives you instant backgrounds, it gives you research, and it gives you a couple of promotional campaigns. So that's another tool at the RAB that you can use for prospecting. The next is the prospect indicating report. Every week we run a prospecting report. And what this prospecting report is based on our website traffic, who are the categories being searched the most that week, and who are the co-op categories being searched the most that week. Now, if others are searching it, there's probably a good reason, right? So lawn and garden is being searched because people are stuck at home and they want to do home improvement projects. I did. Boating and water sports. There's a huge pent-up demand right now for ATVs, UTVs, autos. My Harley dealer friend who's been a client for 20 years says, I can't keep up. People are coming in and they're not even negotiating price. Guy came in last week, he said, I want that one right there. And he said, what do you want, pricing? Normally he has to negotiate with people. The guy said, no, I want it, I need it today. What's it gonna cost me to take it today? I gotta leave the store on that bike. And he said, okay, here's the deal, sign it. And so their profitability is going up because people are so pent up of being locked down, they wanna get out. So these are the categories that are being looked at. And of course, obvious, senior market and healthcare practitioners. Why? It's a COVID world, right? They're the hardest hit right now, and those are the solutions. So categories of co-op, we pull this report all the time. The report includes the instant background for those categories. Again, you'll find it under sales tools, prospecting, prospect report, weekly prospecting report. Another tool from RAB is the top business trends. This is updated annually. What the top business trends does is it takes the top categories and shows you how their business flows. So for instance, if you look at auto dealers, 7% of their business happens in January, 8.7% happens in July. And so you can see what this really does is it makes a case for annual contracts. Because there's nobody on that page with a 0. Even those that call themselves seasonal, none of them have a 0. So this makes the case. And the funny thing is with this report, you can't screw it up. If you've got a month that's lower, you should be advertising to try to raise that up. If you've got a month that's higher, you should be advertising to capture that demand. So there's no lose here. So that's just another one of the tools that we have at the RAB. The number one most used tools is our instant backgrounds. These are category briefs on everything that goes on in the category, from who they buy, demographics, why they buy, what they buy, how they spend, how long the buying cycle is, how much they spend, what the average price is. Instant backgrounds are constantly updated and they're available on most every category. So we like to evaluate our prospects, and these are the places you evaluate them. You want to evaluate them on the station customer match. Again, I think starting with the end in mind makes a whole lot of sense. So evaluate them on the customer match. Do they advertise? That doesn't mean radio. Do they advertise at all? Because if they don't advertise at all, chances are they don't believe in advertising and you're not going to get them to advertise. So look at their advertising. Try to guess what their monthly ad spending is. We have another tool, as you may expect, on the RAB called the ad to sales ratio. You'll find that under prospecting. It has the ISKI codes for every product, and it shows you what percentage of sales that product category spends on advertising. So if you're calling on a furniture store and you can figure out what kind of monthly sales they're doing, you can say to them, because nobody's going to tell you what their budget is, but you can say the average furniture store in America is putting 5% of their gross monthly sales into advertising. I've calculated you at about $1 million a month in sales. Are you putting about 5% towards advertising? And what are they going to say? That's a little high, that's a little low. If they're a car dealer, they're going to say, oh, I do more than that, because car dealers have egos. They always want to sound like they're better. Co-op vendor support. We'll spend a little time talking about co-op, but co-op, just in a nutshell, is a manufacturer paid for campaign. So for instance, if you call on the local Ace Hardware store and they sell Benjamin Moore paint, Benjamin Moore, who makes that paint, will pay the local Ace Hardware store a portion of their advertising expense if they advertise that product. That's why it's called a cooperative effort, co-op. Local market competition. If they've got a lot of competition, Paul couldn't come up with more than 4 toothpastes. So if there's a lot more than 4 in the category, they have to advertise more to keep on that positioning ladder. And I think one of the most important is access to the decision maker. If you can't talk to the decision maker, you're going to spend a lot of time, not impossible, but it's going to be a lot harder. So when you're evaluating, look, I suggested 10% of your time be spent on prospecting. I want that to be valuable time. So you're going to waste a lot of time calling on a national client that you don't have access to the decision maker. But the person who's right down the street, the dress shop, the beauty salon, the car dealership, where the local decision maker is on site, far better prospect. We've created a spreadsheet called the Prospect Success Indicator, lovingly referred to as PSI. PSI, pressure, get it? We're all under pressure to develop new business, so the PSI. And it takes all of those criteria, and all you have to do is fill out the red and then calculate the rest of the numbers, and it'll give you a score for whether that prospect is good. 27 or more is an excellent prospect. 22 to 26 is a good prospect. Less than 21, put them on the someday maybe list. So it'll calculate that for you, and you have access to that. Getting more appointments, using more resources. We live in a world where the resources are everywhere. Google, LinkedIn, Facebook. Prospecting is not the way we used to do it. Why is getting an appointment so hard? Because according to Gordon Burrell at Burrell & Associates, there are 36 other people calling on your client this month for a total of 37 media reps, not just sales. Now, that doesn't include the paper salespeople, the copier salespeople, the insurance salespeople, and the other vendor products that they encountered. There are 37 media reps per month calling on your client. The good news for you after today is that 90% of them are level 1 or 2, and you're going to strive to have level 3 and 4 moments. So even your prospecting calls can have a level 3 moment. As we're talking about making these calls, look back at that chart and see where the prospecting call and the focus can be. So in today's marketplace, you have to get an appointment by being not only different, but better. It's a very competitive world. And we have, of course, and I'm trying not to make this a commercial for the RAB, but you are members, and our focus is to help you get better and to help you do your job easier. So every morning we send you Radio Sales Today. Radio Sales Today has daily sales tips, the Radio Sales Today archive, a training calendar, news about various categories. We're an aggregator. We don't necessarily publish all of our own content. I write the sales tips, but we bring in other sources from Adweek and Ad News. We have a partnership with the Association of National Advertisers. So Radio Sales Today, if you're not a subscriber right now, I would encourage you to start subscribing. It's on rab.com. Once you log in, you go all the way down to the black section at the bottom and click on Subscribe to Radio Sales Today. You should also, while you're there, subscribe to our monthly podcast, Radio on Main Street, and our blog that comes out weekly called the Radio Matters blog. And all of those will be coming to you, and they talk about what you're dealing with. They don't talk about what we're dealing with. They are specifically publications designed to help you. So you want to look at some new research to get more of those appointments. Learn about the prospect's industry, learn about the company, their website. I saw a statistic in Sales Magazine last month that 87% of sellers call on a client without first looking at their website. That makes no sense to me. It's so easy. So look at their website. Have a valid business reason. We call that VBR. Walk the store. Know the decision maker's name. When I was having difficulty calling on a prospect or having the prospect give me a meeting, I did a sinister little trick that Jason Jennings talked about back in the day. I took a clipboard into the store and I walked around and I was taking notes. And I just looked around. How long do you think in today's world with cameras it would take the manager or the owner to come out and say, "What are you doing?" Every time it worked. The manager would come out and say, "What are you doing?" Because I'm walking around with a clipboard. I'm looking for co-op, I'm looking for how the store is laid out, and it would give me a great opportunity. Well, Ginger, I'm glad you asked. My name is Jeff Schmidt. I work for the Charleston Radio Group, and we specialize in identifying opportunities for businesses to grow. So before I called you, because I know you probably get lots of prospect calls, before I called you, I wanted to come in and look at the store and take some notes on some things that I see that I might be able to bring some ideas for you. But since you're here, would you be willing to meet with me next Tuesday at 2:15?
Sure.
Boom. Done. And that's, those are the types of calls, I call those the drive-bys. Those are when you are between appointments and it doesn't make sense to go back to the office because you don't have enough time to go to the office and then get to the next appointment, but you got that 20-minute gap. Take a clipboard and walk into a store and start taking some notes. It gets the decision maker in front of you all the time. I've only got kicked out once, but it gets the decision maker in front of you all the time. And it allows you to prepare those smart questions in advance. When you're doing that customer needs analysis and you're sitting there and you say, "I noticed that you had paint on shelf level 3 and most hardware stores have it on the top level at eye level. Why do you have it on level 3? Well, that's a pretty smart question, right? I mean, no other media rep is going to be in there asking that question, so it allows you to develop those smart questions. We have sample client meeting planners. We have something called the meeting planner that asks 23 questions before the meeting that you ask of yourself to determine the outcome. We have getting the appointment before that call. You want to have a valid business reason. You want to prepare your meeting planner. You want to hone your elevator speech. And so when you make that call, you are concise, not like the guy's call that I shared with you before that couldn't even remember his phone number, but he was rambling, bambling. So you say, "Hi, my name is Paul O'Malley, and I'm with the Charleston Radio Group. I noticed that there were some negative reviews on Yelp for your company, and I'd like to talk to you about that because I've been there and I don't think those reviews are accurate. I'd like to schedule an appointment with you. How about Wednesday at 2:15? So did he say anything about radio, rates, frequency? We've got the #1 morning show, blah, 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 blah. No, he talked about an issue that probably is of importance to that owner, that they're getting 3-star ratings instead of 5-star ratings. And then he asked for the appointment at 2:15. Why 2:15? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's specific. It's a different number.
And it also leads to that it won't be a long meeting if so-and-so.
Bingo. It's psychology. When you hear 2:15, you think, oh, that's going to be a 15-minute meeting.
Yep.
And it's unique. Everybody else is saying, would you like to meet at 2 o'clock? Or would you like to meet at 2:30? But you come in and say, I'd like to meet with you at 2:15. And you don't even have to tell them how long it is. You say, would you like to meet at 2:15? They assume it's a 15-minute meeting. If they ask how long it is, you say, most first call meetings are 15 minutes. If it is going to go longer, it'll be on you, not me. If you invite me to stay longer, I'll be happy to, but 15 minutes should be enough. So then what can you do for the client is where you start. Start with that end in mind. Remember, these cold call scripts, I'm sharing with you some scripts. Everything that I share with you today has to be filtered through, does this fit my personality? The last thing I want you to do is be somebody you're not. So if there's something that we're talking about today that makes you feel uncomfortable, by all means, don't do it. Or if the words that I have on the screen aren't the words that you would say, then make it your own. When I started in sales, I looked at all the scripts, I read all the scripts, I memorized all the scripts, and then I changed all the scripts so that I had what I thought was the important point, but I made it my own. So how do you get around the gatekeeper? You ever have a gatekeeper? How do you get around them? You don't. You have to make friends with the gatekeeper. You want to get to know the gatekeeper, develop a relationship. There is one technique that I have learned. It's called a pre-call letter that gets you around the gatekeeper. And it's basically your elevator pitch that you send to the client in advance. Who you are, what you're with, what's your valid business reason, what are the purpose of the meeting and the benefits to the client, and what time you're going to call. And you mail that to the client. For those of you under 30, mail is this, you take this piece of paper and you fold it up and you put it in an envelope and you lick the envelope or you peel off the envelope and you put a stamp on it and you take it, if you can find one, to this thing called a mailbox. And then somebody in a blue suit comes and picks it up and they take it back to this magical place where they sort it and they deliver it to your client. But your clients aren't getting handwritten notes these days. But you send this, and then how's that call to the decision maker? How's that call through the gatekeeper? Ginger, you're the gatekeeper. Hi, can I talk to Paul, please? You're the gatekeeper. Gatekeep me.
Sure. Maybe. No, I'm not going to say.
No, say no. You want to say no to me. Why? What are you calling about? What do you? Okay, you're the gatekeeper. I'm calling for Ginger. Can I talk to Ginger, please?
What is this regarding?
We have an appointment at 2:15 today on the phone.
Can I confirm it with you?
I sent a letter and sent some information. I'm calling to follow up on that.
Well, it's not on the schedule, sir.
Oh, well, when could I get on the schedule to follow up on it?
Next Tuesday at 4.
Boom, done.
There you go.
Now I got my appointment, okay? But you have a reason to call because you said you were going to call, and that's an appointment, right? 9 times out of 10, the gatekeeper's not going to be as difficult as Paul. And they'll say, oh, okay, let me check if he's available. Let me check if she's available. All right, so pre-call letters do work. What about appointment objections? We don't do radio. We're happy with our current advertising. We have no money. I'm too busy right now. Send me some information. You ever hear any of those things? You know my response to every one of those things, and we're going to do a little deeper dive into handling objections later. You know what my response to any one of those things is? Tell me you don't do radio. Caitlin?
Oh, I don't do radio.
That's exactly why I called. Because if you did do radio, you wouldn't need me. That's exactly why I called, is how I respond first to a lot of these kinds of objections. We don't do radio. That's exactly why I called. We're happy with our current advertising. That's exactly why I called. Your advertising is fantastic. I'd like to talk to you about, boom. Your current advertising is only going after this audience. Boom. We have no money. That's exactly why I called. We have this unique opportunity to help businesses get money, and I'd like to share it with you. I don't know if you do one of those half-price hookup trade for cash deals where you get certificates and you sell it. The RAB has a product called Go-Kart that are you using us or are you using somebody else?
IncentRev.
Okay, IncentRev is the company that Paul and I used back in the Cumulus days. I was doing 30 grand a month in IncentRev, and clients weren't spending a dime to be a part of it. They were giving us product and certificates. We have no money. That's exactly why I called. If I could show you a way to get marketing without cost, boom. I'm too busy right now. Call back next month. Well, that's exactly why I called. I knew you'd be very busy, and I'm trying to get on your schedule for next month. I don't want to chase you down or have you chase me. Can I just get on your calendar for next month? And plan that meeting out in advance. Send me some information. Well, that's exactly why I called. The information that I have to send is very visual, and I'd like to share it with you. So it's a little cheesy, but it has worked for me. And again, this is one of those things, if it fits your personality, I tend to be a little cocky and a little confident. So if it works with your personality, do that. If it doesn't, then you'll need a different approach. But in terms of research, this is that next point on the 7 steps. We've created a tool at the RAB for you called the Pre-Contact Checklist. And you see it in your handout right now. I'm going to give you a minute to take a look at that, or 30 seconds. I'm selfishly saying that so I can get a drink of water.
Page 11.
Page 11, for those of you in Yorba Linda, California. No, Rio Linda. What did Rush Limbaugh always say? For those of you in Rio Linda. Now, I'm not suggesting, we're not suggesting that you do everything on this list, but if you do 2 of the things on this list, you're in the 8% of sellers who are, what category of selling? Ginger?
3 and 4.
Well, what's the name for the third?
Consultant.
Consultant selling. See, you remembered that. But that German guy, what was his name?
Herman.
Herman something or other. So by doing 2 things on this list, and some of them are really low effort, by doing 2 things on this list, you will be in the 8% of sellers that are that consultant, sell, and sustaining resource. Find the trade mag. We talked a lot of these things. So these are the things that you can do. You have the research department. I'd encourage you to look at the pre-contact checklist. How many of the things on that list are you already doing instinctively? Are there some things that you're doing already, or are there some things on there that are new for you that you might want to try? Hopefully there's a couple of new things on there. And of course, ask RAB. I missed that slide. Ask RAB. 800-232-3131. Call right now. Operators are standing by. 800-232-3131. It's called our Member Response Team. Rita is most likely the first person you will encounter, and she will either help you immediately or direct you to the department that can assist you, whether it's Annette, Tammy, myself, Dave Casper. We are all here to serve you, and we are in business because of you. And so we want you to ask RAB. So don't spend a whole lot of time searching the website. If you can't find something, pick up the phone, shoot me an email, say, hey, I remember the German guy's name, but I don't remember where to find the prospect indicator report you talked about. I will respond to you within hours with a screenshot of where it is on the website to help you find it. So don't spend your time needlessly looking. I know we call them rabbit holes on the internet. You ever do that? You start looking for something and you find something out and you go, oh, Cole Haan's having a sale right now. Maybe I should look at those shoes. Oh, those are really cool. And so don't go down rabbit holes, just ask RAB. All right, how are we doing for time? We have 35 minutes before lunch. Let's play a game. Are you ready to play another game? Are we all covered?
Yeah.
Okay, there are some homework assignments for you on page 8. And that's to find your 6 favorite tools for RAB.com for smarter prospecting. And then the homework for page 9 is to come up with your valid business reason. And I would encourage the sales managers participating in this and the market managers participating in this, make that a sales meeting. Make that a sales meeting. What's the valid business reason for calling? And the second part of that is your elevator pitch. Do you know what an elevator pitch is? You know where the term came from?
If you're on an elevator with someone getting across in the length of
Boom.
riding an elevator.
The average ride in an elevator is 60 seconds. So you have 60 seconds. If somebody says, so what do you do? What do you answer? That's your elevator speech. And you want your elevator, and people will ask you for your elevator pitch on the phone. When you call and you want to get an appointment, they're going to say, what do you do? And the default response is to tell them, well, I work for the Charleston Radio Group. We represent 99, and go through this litany of list of stations that you have. And we have the #1 morning show personality. Who's your best morning? Who's your top morning show?
Well,
they're all top.
They're all great.
Okay, give me a name.
Steve Harvey in the morning.
Steve Harvey. We have Steve Harvey in the morning, and your elevator speech usually is focused on you, right? So my encouragement, and that's why I think it's a good sales meeting, is to have everybody create their own elevator pitch and do it in the room and then tear them apart. Because it's much better to be torn apart in the meeting room than it is by a client and wonder why you're not getting appointments. Well, maybe your elevator pitch is off. And so my elevator pitch is, what do you do? I think big and I make big things happen for business. And what does that do? When I say that, what do you say?
What does that mean?
Boom, I've got you. When you lean in and say, well, what does that mean? Then I have an opportunity. Well, I'm a business strategist, and what I do is I analyze the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of a business, and I work with them to minimize the weaknesses, maximize the opportunities, and grow their business. Why? Do you have one that you'd like to talk about? You know, so it's got to be somewhat mysterious, because the first thing you want them to say in response is, what does that mean? And then you have that chance, because that's the invitation. All right, so let's play the next game. It is on page 12, did you say?
The square game?
Yes, the square game. It's on page 12 for those of you in Rio Linda and at home. I haven't been checking the chat box. Have you been looking?
Nothing really new.
Nothing really new. Okay. Chatters, feel free to chat us up anytime. Okay, so let's play the square game. Here's the rule on the square game. It's not a timed game. What I want you to do is look at the squares and count the number of squares. And then write your answer on the top right of the page. And for those in the room, I'm going to be able to walk around and see if I've got a right answer. For those of you in the chat box, I want you to type in how many squares are there. So type in. Are we good? Oh,
Give them the squares.
give them the squares. Give them, well, they have it on there. They have it on there. Okay. Okay.
You just said add up the squares, right?
I did. I did.
Actually, I forgot one.
Okay. I don't see a right answer in this room yet.
We forgot one, I got it. Good call.
Got it, I don't know what
Unless there could be another one, but.
I still don't see a right answer in this room.
Oh, gosh.
Let me slip by you.
Yeah, you gotta evaluate the whole.
I still don't see a right answer in this room. I'm not going to make it go on forever.
Hold on.
Still no right answer.
Jeff, am I still missing one?
Still no right answer.
Hold
This is infinity.
on. Oh, no. I got it. If you added that one.
Still no right answer. This room give up?
You got a little second coming in over here.
What's that? Oh, do we have a lot coming in? Okay, how many?
Hold on, I got it.
We have two right answers so far. Nikki and Andrew and Amber have correct answers. Nobody else has gotten it. But now they're seeing it on the chat, so they know how many there are. That was stupid on my part. Way to go, Schmidt. Okay, the correct answer is 30.
Yep. Yeah.
There are 30 squares, and your Ginger's going, what, 30? How are there 30? Now, my son would tell you that there's 55, and I'll tell you that in a minute. Okay, so here's where there's 30. You ready? There's one big square. There's 16 little individual squares, so now we're at 17. There's 9 squares of 4. 1, 2, 3,
And then within those, you go down.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 squares of 4, and then there's 4 squares of 9. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how we come up with the number 30. Now, my son is attending Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York. He is a dual major of applied mathematics and computer programmer, computer engineering. And what he tells me is that each of these intersecting lines actually forms a square as well. So you should count all the intersections, and it's actually 55 squares on the page. Now, I give you credit if you got 30, but he says 55 if you count all the intersections on there. Jordan, you'd probably do that too because you're an IT guy. So what's the point of this? Why did we just play the square game?
Look beyond it.
Yeah, you have to dig deep to
More than what's there.
tell the story.
Okay. Okay. Caitlin, you've got a perplexed look on your face.
No, I'm thinking that too. There's more than what's there.
Right.
We're predisposed to think of something.
We are predisposed, particularly as salespeople and very, creative people to look at what's in front of us and make a quick snap judgment. I mean, sidebar politically, that's what's getting us into trouble as a country, is we make snap judgments. We need to stop and really investigate what's going on. But in the business world, if you make the snap judgment, you'll see 16 squares there, and you'll stop at that. So it's no secret that I'm doing this just before the customer needs analysis, because the customer needs analysis is your opportunity to learn about the business, and you don't want to just see the surface level. What they tell you in the first answer is always the easy answer. You have to dig deeper. People buy from us because we understand them, not because we make them understand us. See, this whole thing of selling, I hate the term selling, because we don't sell. As Kevin Malone, a regional vice president that I worked with, used to say, you're not making sales, you're witnessing purchases. Jeffrey Gitomer says people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So our role is not to sell, which means make them understand our products, make them understand what Steve Harvey does, make them understand what our urban AC does, make them understand what our country station does, make them understand what Heaven stands for from a radio perspective and an audience. That's all important stuff to us. But remember, we're starting with the end in mind. People buy from us because we understand them, not because we make them understand us. So the client needs analysis is the time when you try to understand them. You can't have an argument if your goal is to understand. You can have an argument if you're trying to prove somebody right or wrong. This helps in marriage too. I learned early in my marital life, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because you can't be both. So you have to choose understanding versus being right. And that's why I like to read books beyond business and beyond sales, because it expands my knowledge base and allows me to learn other perceptions and other things that are going on. So buyers are more likely to deal with salespeople who best understand the buyer's needs instead of the seller's products and services. So that's where that product, I used to make a big deal out of all of my sellers knowing exactly what was on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who's on Saturday morning at 9, who's on Monday night at 7. And I used to quiz them and test them every week. And it was on their product knowledge, but that was when I was new. They don't really have to know that stuff. What they have to know is what the client's needs are. And then they have to know that stuff to be able to create the solutions for the client. Most sales are lost. Not in the proposal phase, but in the customer needs analysis phase. It's this phase that's the single most important part. You have to be like a 2-year-old. Anybody ever have a 2-year-old? 2-year-olds ask, why? What? Why is the sky blue, Daddy? Why is the car, what's the favorite question? Where are they going, Jordan, with your questions? This is my little 2-year-old granddaughter, Aniston, cutest thing in the world, according to me anyway. And she is so curious. And she is so interested in things. The other day, I wish I put the video in here, but she was trying sushi for the first time. And she picked up the little piece of rice with the seasoning on it, and she put that in her mouth, and she picked it up, and she's just starting to talk. She goes, these are pretty good. And then she took the whole thing and put it in her mouth and went, because the seaweed and the fish and all that. But she's constantly asking questions. And if you've ever had a 2-year-old in the back seat of your car or walked down the street with a 2-year-old, why Daddy? Why Daddy? Why Grandpa? Why this? Grandpa, why does the boat do this? Why are those people doing, and they're constantly, and it makes you sick. So that's what you have to do in a customer needs analysis, but not like a 2-year-old. You have to do it in a little bit more professional way. You have to find out where people are coming from, and the fish has meat on it. But the true answers that you're looking for are on the bones. So you have to pick right down to the bone. And I hate to be so graphic with that, but here's some sample questions that you could be using. Who are your key customers? Do you have any company-wide retailer-specific programs? Any new products? What's your digital strategy? Do you like the idea of special promotions and tie-ins? All of these types of questions can be part of your needs analysis. We have a sample customer needs analysis form on rab.com under sales tools. Most companies that I'm familiar with have a CNA form, and my caution is do not make the form the focus of the meeting. Because the problem is, and I did this when I started in sales, I would have this customer needs analysis form, and I'd go in with my clipboard and I'd start peppering them with questions like they were in an interrogation. My wife always says, just talk to me, don't interrogate me. And so I would pepper them with all these questions to try to fill out the form. Well, the form is the documentation of the conversation, not the direction. You need to step back and listen, really listen to what the client is telling you when you're asking your questions. I only like to go in with 3 questions now. 3 questions that I want to get to. The rest of them I'll come up with on the fly based on what the client is telling me. Tell me more about that. Why do you say that? Why is that so? And that's how we do it. So the last thing you want your clients to feel is that you're not listening to them. Remember, the one asking questions is actually the one in control of the conversation. So keep the client's wall or their guard down. They're just here. Keep the client's wall down by asking questions. And for heaven's sakes, under no circumstances, I don't care what happens, do not start selling. And I'm usually not that directive. But I've been in front of situations where the seller the client will say, well, I'd really like to buy your morning show. And the seller puts the customer needs analysis apart and says, okay, how many spots do you want to buy, blah, blah. And that's one of the clients that will later say, I tried radio once and it didn't work. The clients will actually goad you into trying to sell. Well, tell me a little bit about your stations. Well, I'll be happy to tell you about my stations when the time is appropriate. I'm here to find out about frankly, I don't know if you should be using our stations because you've been in business for a long time, so have we, and we haven't done business together. So obviously we're both surviving without each other right now. I think the key is to figure out if we can help each other grow in the future. And that's not going to be me telling you about my products. It's going to be me learning more about yours. Let's talk about. So even when they try to get rates or ratings information, you do not want to start selling. Now remember this guy, he was the first guy that I quoted that said, I will not ask for your business unless I can come up with a plan for improving it. What's his name? That's Phil Fisher, but that's not Phil Fisher. That's Don Beveridge. Don Beveridge was an adjunct professor at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and he also had a company called Beveridge Business Systems. And he says, I will not ask for your business unless I can first come up with a plan for improving it. So the focus, again, is on improving business. Your elevator pitch, what do? I help businesses improve. It could be that simple. All right, next in the 7 steps of selling. Boy, we're almost at noon already. This morning has flown by. Is it just me or has it flown by for you? Good, good. What makes an excellent proposal? Raise your hand if you're married. You're engaged? Perfect.
Married today, actually.
Perfect. Oh, COVID stopped that?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have an engagement story? Mm-hmm. Was there a fantastically romantic, incredibly fun engagement story that goes along with it?
Yeah.
For you? Okay, perfect. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to ask you to share it. But typically, women in particular always have a story, which puts incredible pressure on the man, because you can't just be at dinner and hand her a ring. You got to do something really special, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Tony Alessandra wrote this book called Non-Manipulative Selling, and he likens a marriage proposal to a sales proposal. Now, your husband-to-be would never have proposed to you unless 99% of his mind was convinced you'd say yes, right? Men are not going to put themselves out there. They're not going to do that. Relationships are not going to do that, take that kind of risk. So a marriage proposal, you wouldn't ask the question unless you could reasonably predict the answer. You shouldn't ask the question of a client unless you can reasonably predict the answer. Now, if you're in a marriage proposal and you know the answer is yes, it's because you're getting along, you have things in common, you're different enough to complement each other, you're going in the same direction, you have the same goals, you have the same background, you're romantically involved, there's a chemical attraction, there's all of this thing going on, all of these components that make the relationship what it is, so that you as the woman are ready to say yes, and I as the man are willing to ask. Same scenario, according to Tony, in a client relationship. Getting to know them, getting to understand what's important to them. If you were, okay, I'll just do an easy one. If you were a devout Catholic and your husband was an atheist, that probably wouldn't work, right? So there are some fundamental core beliefs that you have to have in common. You find those out over cocktails and dinner. You find them out around the fire, at the campfire, telling stories, and those are all called customer needs analysis. You didn't know your husband-to-be was doing a customer needs analysis all this time, did you? We're all trying to figure you out because the female brain is so different than the men. And, we're single-focused. You have all of these things going on. Oh, those shoes look nice. And, all of this stuff going on, and we have to figure that out. Well, it's the same with clients, okay? So I love the metaphor of a marriage proposal and a sales proposal. So as we move into the proposal phase, what we're really doing, and it's sort of my routine on sales training. I told you before I hated the word sales, but I've made a living out of it. So that seems odd. And I hate the word training. I absolutely hate the word training. Because you train a dog, you train a pet, you don't train people. What I see my role as today and in my daily work is empowering you. You don't need training, you need knowledge and empowerment. And so I don't train you. Today is not a training session. Today, I hope, is an empowerment session. So clients don't need to be sold, just like salespeople don't need to be trained. They need to be led on a path of self-discovery. My goal is to have light bulbs go on for you and to have you think, oh, I can use that, or oh, that makes sense to me, or oh, see, it's all in you already. I'm just bringing it out and reframing it so that you know how to use it in your professional career. And in the client setting, we don't have to sell them. Remember, people don't like to be sold. They hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So the clients really love to buy things that they know will work. And so our job is through questioning to lead them on that path of self-discovery. And today, through questioning and sharing some information with you, hopefully I'm leading you on a path of self-discovery. I'm not Superman. I don't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers. Paul doesn't have all the answers. Heck, Ed doesn't have all the answers, and he owns the company. None of us can possibly have all the answers. So we're not Superman. We're not product peddlers. I'm not here peddling away to sell. You're not out there peddling spots and dots and banner ads and pre-roll. What we're doing is we're developing and cultivating relationships. We're cultivating relationships with local businesses in our community because we can have an impact for those local businesses with our expertise, our empathy, and our problem-solving skills. Remember, this is the picture I used for the 2%ers. Those are the sustaining resource. The owner of the business is the young lady on the left, and everybody else has been invited to the table to talk and to give input. Because even people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs always needed input from people. They aren't the smartest, they may be the wealthiest, but they're not the smartest. They've surrounded themselves with smart people. So the best written proposals, to carry out the metaphor, have a few things, a few ingredients. First of all, they're customer-focused, customer-focused, customer-focused. That's how Don Beveridge used to say it. They identify you as a problem solver. They set you apart. They help you stand out in the market as the go-to for marketing, because most of the proposals are going to be schedule, price. Most of the proposals from your competitors are going to be banner ad, price. They're going to be product, price. You're going to be different and stand out in the market. And they also demonstrate that you understand the client. There are two ways we buy. Do you know what they are? How do we buy products? First of all, there's a triggering event, right? When we're evaluating the options, we buy on emotion and we justify with logic. Now, when I was early in sales and I admitted that I bought materialistic goods like Mercedes and boats and watches and things like that, those were totally emotional purchases. Nobody needs to spend $65,000 on a Rolex watch because a $2 Timex will do the same thing. It'll tell time. But there's an emotional appeal to it. Premium brands have an emotional appeal. And that emotional appeal is you've made it, you deserve it, you own it. Then you justify it with logic. Well, I got the Mercedes because it's the most engineered car in the world. I mean, it's the best, it'll last forever. Don't pay attention to the fact that I flip my cars every 2 years anyway, but it'll last forever. I could put 300,000 miles on this car. And that watch, boy, that'll be passed on to my children and my children's children. It's an investment in a legacy. Well, that's how we logically justify our purchase when we step outside and buy things that are emotional connections. Knowledge tells, but passion sells. That's from Joseph Siegel, that QVC company we talked about. You have product knowledge, but it's your passion for the product that really does the selling. And you see that, you see them live that out on QVC every single day. How many clients that you're calling on would describe you as passionate? And is it passionate about radio or passionate about their business growing? Did you show up on Saturday morning because you know they were short-staffed and you helped out? I've bartended because I know my restaurant clients are having a hard time finding work, and I just go out there and start slinging the drinks and help them out. I actually, in Wisconsin, you have to be licensed to be a car dealer. So when I was working with George, he was down 3 salespeople. I went out and got a license. And I spent my Saturdays in the pit looking at ups and helping him sell. Now, I didn't take payment for that. I didn't take payment for being a bartender. It was just as much of a learning lesson for me on a category than it was helping out a client. But that's the passion that I took into their business. And they could call me at any time, day or night, and they know that they'd get an answer and they'd get help from me. People are looking for these partnerships, but you can't call it a partnership because that's so cliche, right? The best written proposals, again, 100% client focused, they solve problems, they are research based, and they are benefit oriented. Where are we at here? Okay, so let's go through these proposal components. I think we're on page 14. Remember, rule number 1 of advertising was what? People do not
Like to be sold.
Rule number 1 of advertising, that's Jeffrey Gitomer. The rule number 1 of advertising is people do not buy products and services. They buy what the product and service does for them. See how hard it is to remember this stuff? See how hard that is? You've got to review it. The prospect is also buying what advertising does for them. They're not buying advertising. We're selling advertising, Peter Drucker. The customer rarely buys what the person thinks they're selling. They're buying what the advertising does for them. So let's dig in and look at the 9 components of a successful proposal. And then we'll take our break for lunch. And what I want to tell you is that this is a full-blown proposal, okay? I don't expect every proposal that you put out to have 17 pages or 9 pages or 12 pages. You can do a good job with a proposal with 2 pages. But I'm talking about the annual contract where you're asking for, what's the average order in this market?
$2,500 a month.
$2,500 a month. Okay, so now I'm talking about the client that's going to spend $60,000 a year. We've just doubled the average order. That's when you pull out the full armor and do that. The first thing is you want a title page, obviously. Okay, so how does this title page look to you?
Basic.
Well, I feel like the logo, and maybe it's because I'm far away, is very blurry.
Yeah.
for the
Right.
band,
Okay.
marketing
Is it a compelling title page? Come on, this is my work. You're evaluating my work and you said you don't think it's very good?
In that case, we call it basic.
at the top.
Okay, here's what doesn't need to be on your title page. The word proposal. It's pretty obvious. That's why you're there. Here's what else doesn't need to be on there. My logo. They know who you are. Okay? That's focused on me. You don't need a marketing partnership between your radio station and the client. That's not what they're buying. That's maybe what you're selling, but they don't need a marketing partnership. And you certainly don't need to put your name on there. You're sitting in front of them, for heaven's sakes. You probably don't even need the date. This is what my title page looked like. How to sell more Jeeps by creating the Regional Jeep Center of Northeast Wisconsin. Let's take the hill. That's a title page. There's nothing on there about me, nothing on there about my radio stations. Now, where do you think I got that information? I finished the customer needs analysis and I said, George, of all the things we've talked about, what's most important to you and pressing right now? I got to figure out how to sell more Jeeps. Boom, title page. So the most important problem they tell you in the customer needs analysis becomes the title page to your proposal. Please, please, please take your logos off, take your name off, take all of that stuff off. It's not necessary. Focus on the client. So what we did in this little dealership is, it was in Northeast Wisconsin. It's Appleton, Oshkosh, Green Bay, and we're between Green Bay and Milwaukee. And so we made it sound really big, the Regional Jeep Center of Northeast Wisconsin. Well, there were 3 other dealers in Wisconsin, in that area selling Jeeps, and George just got the franchise. So we called it the Regional Jeep Center. Does that sound better than Van Boxtel Jeep? Does that sound better than Gandrud Jeep? Of course it does. So we created this. This was a marketing idea. The Regional Jeep Center of Northeast Wisconsin will help you take the hill. And guess what? It worked phenomenally. He became the #1 Jeep dealer. So the second part after your title page is the situation review. You have to review for them what you discussed in the customer needs analysis. I mean, look, you're forgetting things, we're forgetting things that we just talked about 4 hours ago. You can't imagine the client remembering what you talked about 3 weeks ago if you're just getting back to the proposal. So the situation review, here are the 6 most important words you can use. Based on what you told me. Based on what you told me. You should incorporate those words into every presentation you do based on what you told me. Because what does that say? This is about you. Based on what you told me, you want to drive traffic to the website, improve conversion rates, and capture data. Have I got that right? And at the end of every page, Don Beveridge wrote a book, Getting to Yes, the Yes Syndrome. He said, on every page of the proposal, you ask the question, is this correct? And they say yes. And what are you getting them to do? You're getting them used to, subconsciously, saying yes. But if at any time they say no, what are you supposed to do? Stop the proposal and say, then we can't continue. I need to ask some more questions because clearly something has changed or I misunderstood. And when you stop that proposal in midstream because they said no on a page, you've just earned their trust and credibility because you're not going to continue when they said no, that doesn't make sense. So based on what you told me, these are your goals. Is that accurate? Yes. Okay. So this campaign is going to create interest, excitement, and desire. And then we're going to go through, it's designed to increase the sale of personal computers, blah, 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 blah. So all of that comes under the situation review. Then you get to the competition. You have to be very careful when you're talking about the competition. Okay? This is an opportunity where you're going to diagnose what's going on like a doctor instead of saying, you know, you really quit smoking and lose some weight. Doctors don't always say that until they diagnose, right? Once they figure out you're overweight or you have some health problem, then they'll be directive, but they're going to ask first. So before you start attacking the competition, you want to look at what the advantages are. Tell me about the advantages of your competition. What do they do really well? You want to get a client talking in a customer needs analysis, ask them about their competition. They'll bleed all over the table. What do they do well and what are the challenges do you think they face? And then sit back and say, tell me how you do better. And that's when they get this all confident look and say, well, everybody knows me in this market, and I'm blah, 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 and they tell you all of the advantages they have. The next part of the proposal is the industry consumer research. And again, do you have a research department here at Saga? Yes, it's called the RAB. So here are your instant backgrounds. Instant backgrounds we've talked about. Competitive media. Competitive media, I have a little trouble with the word competitive. I'll be transparent about that. I don't think any media is competitive. I think if they're advertising, it's good. But there are competitive differences. And I've stopped using the terms. There are a lot of other people that do training. I've stopped, and this was a book that I read by Seth Godin. I've stopped using the term competitor, and I call them worthy rivals. Because worthy rivals sounds a lot nicer than competitor. Competitor seems like I'm fighting, but a worthy rival is somebody who does the same stuff that I do and does a good job. I just do it differently. And your personal taste might make a difference there. So competitive media, maybe worthy rival media. Where else are people spending their money if they're not spending it with you? Radio, of course, the #1 reach medium. We have all sorts of data that comes from the Nielsen comparable metrics. You don't have to be a subscriber to use this. We're a subscriber, and we use this information and we make it available to you. So we look at the competitive media and the other media, and the one caution I'll say before we go to lunch is you don't want to make them mad. You've heard the term before, don't tell them their baby's ugly. If they absolutely love advertising in the yellow pages, don't tell them it's stupid. Listen, because if you tell them that the yellow pages are a dumb place to be, and you have all of these answers of why it's a dumb place to be, they're going to get mad. And you're going to get mad if I don't take a break and go to lunch. So let's go to lunch. We'll see you in 1 hour and 15 minutes at 1:15 Eastern. Thank you, everybody. Be prepared to ask the question, what's your #1 takeaway? For those of you on the stream, thanks so much for sitting there and being a part of this. Get up and walk around.